Good evening, everybody. It's 6:30, just gone 6:30, and welcome to this meeting of the Overview and Scrutiny Committee. It's being streamed on the Council's YouTube channel. The recording of the meeting will remain online for 4 years, and if you are present in the chamber, you are consenting to appearing in the recording and broadcast, which may also be used for training purposes. This is the annual budget meeting of the Overview and Scrutiny Committee, and the format is a little different to our usual meeting, so I will remind members of the process. Firstly, I will ask the Leader of the Council to introduce the report. Then I will ask the Cabinet Member for Resources to add his comments on the report. Following that, I will invite each Cabinet Member in turn to present their respective portfolios in the order outlined on the agenda front sheet. When I indicate, please could the relevant Cabinet Member and any supporting officers move to sit before the committee and give us an overview of the portfolio. We will then open up to questions before moving on to the next Cabinet Member. This is a very detailed report and there is a lot to get through this evening. Finally, could I ask members of the committee to keep your questions succinct and direct, and remind Cabinet members and officers too in attendance to proceed directly to the answer, again keeping them concise and sweet. So I'll have a word or two to say about the lateness of some of the papers going out shortly, but let's begin with apologies, and we have received apologies from Councillor Harris and Councillor Courtney. I understand that the leader is going to step in and cover the culture and leisure portfolio. Are there any other apologies to recall, please? I think that takes all of us into account, doesn't it? The names I've mentioned. In that case, thank you for that. I think that, looking at my assistant over here, I think that takes care of item number 1 as well. No further apologies. Any declarations of interest members need to record before we proceed with the meeting? No, none being declared. Public question time. Public question time, no members of the public here. And so that takes us on to petitions and deputations. And none to there. So just before we go on into the main business, what's happened there? Before we go on to the main business, the budget and the money plan, I just want to say that it's absolutely not acceptable for key reports to be delivered to us or appear on our laptops 3 hours before this meeting starts. I don't know where the delay occurred, but it was unacceptable. And this seems to be a pattern now of how the Scrutiny Committee is dealt with. Reports late or not appearing at all and deferred to the next meeting. That really has to stop. And if it continues, then I, as chair, with the consent of the committee, will just pull the meeting and it will be held on another day. The report that came, what was it, 3:15 this afternoon? A lot of people haven't even seen it, let alone read it and understood it. And that is not good scrutiny. That is just not good scrutiny. Sorry to get a bit heavy on it, but I think it's disrespectful to all of the members around this table, regardless of everyone's political affiliation. And like I said, it has got to stop. If it happens again, there won't be any discussion. We'll just pull the meeting. And I hope I won't have to do that. I don't know if anybody else wants to chip in and say anything on what's happened this afternoon. Everybody agreeing with what I say, the general tone of what I said, looking around, lots of nods of acceptance. It's got to stop. Okay, thank you for letting me get that off my chest. So let's move straight into the money plan and the budget proposals for 26-27. I think that is... Silence. That's what I thought. I thought Jeremy was just going to lead straight in. So the leader is coming to the table. So, Jeremy, you're going to introduce your report, I take it?
Good evening, everyone. This is the final act in a way to deal with the financial crisis that this council has been facing. I would say this is probably the first budget money plan in 6 years that's based on sound financial assumptions. I want to take the opportunity of thanking Section 151 officer, a team of staff, SIPFA, Ernst & Young's our auditors for helping us get to the point where we now fully understand the financial health of this council. It's taken quite a bit of time. It's taken forensic examination going back until 2021 of the accounts to get to where we are, and the budget papers clearly show the next step. On the 19th of December, we applied for exceptional financial support from the government. We haven't heard back yet. We're expecting that later this month and before the budget setting council meeting. You will remember at December time we were thinking that it was going to be up to £17.5 million. The application's gone in for £15.5 million. And I think it's based on a robust recovery plan, realistic projections of spending of the future and income generation, which is one of the things we need to do, is increase our commercial income to cover the costs. Otherwise, there will be further savings made in council services, and it's based on solid base of accounting. So I think we're there, and what you see today is going to be a budget that can deliver the recovery plan, and hopefully by the end of the financial year that it will go through, will come in with a budget fairly on target without any horrible advice that something's overspent massively and we didn't know that was going to happen. I say, you remember this administration took over from the previous administration with 3 years of financial accounts. Unfinished, not prepared, an exceptional situation. Never happened, I don't think, in any other local authority to have 3 years accounts. And during my time in opposition, I constantly, and I know Declan did, question what was happening to the accounts. We asked that question a number of times. We expressed concern that that we'd be taking over something where we weren't sure what the state of the health of the council's finances were. It took us probably longer than we would have liked to sort it out, but frankly, we were shocked by how the impact of those problems had on our finances. But I am convinced, as long as we follow the recovery plan, which members debated just before Christmas, and we get the exceptional financial support, which I understand the Member of Parliament for Gloucester is fully backing us, then we should be able to deliver a recovery of this council. Quite a bit of it is down to the commercial investment that this council's made in the past, particularly the Forum, which is nearly complete, and the hotel will be opening in February, and that will start bringing in income. And we've already got tenants into the office accommodation, but it takes time to progress that. And it's like one of these big investments that some companies make into a product where it nearly pushes them towards bankruptcy. Happened with Boeing and the jumbo jet, and in the end, it becomes the saviour of the business. I think the Forum will be the saviour of the City Council in an income it will get, but it will also do wonders for the urban regeneration around the King's Quarter. So, I really want to say that I've always supported this project, and I know it was one that was instigated by the Conservative administration, and we're finishing it off. And I'm really proud of how we've done that. I want to thank the officers on that. The next job is, of course, to push ahead with the Greyfriars project. Once we can get that done, we can start repopulating the Eastgate Shopping Centre, which will have a positive impact on our finances as well, and also on the vibrancy of the city. But that's my overview, Chair, of the papers you've got today. They'll go to council in end of November, after they've been to cabinet. And can I also say that this has been a very stressful time for the finance team, and they've had a lot of things to try and deal with. So when people complain about late reports, you need to understand the capacity of the team having to deliver these reports. Normally, we would have had this report as cabinet earlier than we have had. We haven't taken it to cabinet briefing. We've had a briefing on the draft of this report, but it wasn't finalised. We'll be getting that in the next week, the briefing or the next few days anyway, on this budget as well. So that I might have some questions I still need to ask the Section 151 officer. But bear that in mind. The resources of this council are very slim. We have not got masses of capacity. So sometimes things take longer than we would like, but let's make sure we get it right. I know that our team have been working extremely hard to get it right. Thank you, Chair.
Please carry on.
I'll probably come up as officer, I'm not sure. Oh no, well done. Okay, just basically on the report itself, it's a few of us have done this now a few times. It's the report brings forward it brings forward the council's money plan for 26-27, our budget, all the way to 2020-31, budget proposals for the year just about to start. But I think there's 4 points I need to highlight, which is, I would say, is different from, makes us in a different situation from previous years. First of all, the immediate budget position itself. The Section 151 officer is clear that a legally balanced budget for 26-27 is only achievable if exceptional financial support is approved. Specifically, a capitalisation directive of up to 15.5 million. Without that, the council would not be able to set a balanced budget and would face the risk of a Section 114 notice. With EFS assumed, the budget for 26-27 is considered just about robust, but with a very limited headroom and reserves at the lower end of what is acceptable. Second point I need to make is the medium-term outlook. While the EFS allows the council to stabilise 26-27, the money plan still shows deficits returning from 27-28 onwards. This underlines that EFS is a temporary reset, not a solution. The plan is explicit. The delivery of the recovery plan, including further savings, income generation and asset disposal, is essential if the council is to move towards a sustainable medium-term position. Thirdly, the drivers of pressure and the response. The main pressures remain borrowing costs that we know about. In particular, if you think back a few years, I looked at the workings and the assumptions that were made when we were looking at the forum, and back then we were assuming interest rates would be 1.66%, when in fact they're closer to 6%, and that makes a big difference. So the longer interest rates stay high, the more difficult it makes things for us. Minimum revenue provision, we need, that's sort of us writing off the costs of the loans that we're going to take out. The cost of local government reorganisation. The 5-year money plan has got 2 million in there for local government reorganisation, and that doesn't help right now, but we're told we have to do it, so that puts further strains. Ongoing inflationary pressures, which we can't affect really, but these will be partly offset by savings such as reduced pension contributions, contract changes and a full review of fees and charges, which together form part of a 1 million savings and income target for 26-27. Scrutiny should note that this is not a one-off exercise, and similar levels of savings are assumed in future years. Fourth point I need to make is capital assets and risk. The capital programme costs totals around 23 million over 5 years, focused mainly on essential assets and compliance projects, with major generation schemes largely complete. The recovery plan relies heavily on asset disposals, reduced borrowing and future revenue costs. This makes delivery risk, market conditions and organisational capacity, particularly in finance and property, a critical issue for members to keep under review. So in summary, the budget will stabilise the council in the short term, but it is fragile. It depends on EFS approval, a disciplined delivery of the recovery plan and further difficult decisions in future years. So therefore, overview and scrutiny's role in all of this will be crucial, not just in examining this year's proposals, but in monitoring whether the assumptions in this plan are being delivered. In a sense, that is in essence what the budget and the 5-year plan before us is tonight. I would love to be able to say it's all puppies and rainbows, but sadly, we're not living in those times at the minute. So that is more or less it. So happy to take any questions on the broad plan itself.
Thanks, Declan. So looking around for questions for Declan, Vice Chair.
Thank you. You were just talking about contract changes. What sort of contract changes? Are we talking about to people's employment contracts or services?
No, I'm talking about big projects like GL1, etc., things like that. Ubico as well. We'll look at that again. But as such, there's nothing concrete on the table as such. Not personal employment contracts or anything like that.
Councillor Steph Chambers.
Thank you, Chair. You said that this budget is only achievable if the EFS is approved, and if that's not, we face a risk of a 114. The two questions there is that a risk or is that a certainty if we don't get the EFS report? Because I noticed in the risk assessment it's put at the highest risk of 16, and then after mitigation it's still at the highest risk at 6 after mitigation. So how certain are you? Do you have any indication? And secondly, is a 114 a certainty if it's not approved?
Without AFS, it's a certainty. I mean, I have to be blunt. We need the EFS. It's as simple as that. As regards when we will know, we're not going to know until a few days before the annual council budget meeting, which is irritating, to put it mildly. Last year, I believe the councils that had to apply for EFS, they found it around about the 20th of February. So whatever the sort of relevant date this year, that's roughly when we'll find out. But it means that the budget papers will go out for full council without us knowing whether or not we've got the EFS or not. And there's nothing we can do to change that. So in answer to your question, if we don't get EFS, yes, it's section 114. But having said that, all the indications are positive that we will get it. And I would be astonished if we don't. But, you know, we really need to wait until we get the absolute confirmation before that we can really pass that budget with certainty.
Just a really quick question, just to get in my mind. What's the legal date that we have to agree a budget by?
It's the 11th of March, but if we did set the budget at 11th of March, that could have cash flow implications in terms of getting the bills out in time to start collecting council tax on the 1st of April. So that's why we don't leave it as late as that.
It also wouldn't make us put us on very favourable terms with the other councils as well, because we have to bring all their council taxes together and put it in one bill. So that would not be a very optimum outcome. Let's put it that way.
Just one other point on the EFS application. I think the fact that I'm sure the government will look at the cabinet report and the money plan and the recovery plan, and everything's, once that's been approved by the cabinet and it's taken on to full council, even though full council won't necessarily endorsed it, having had that robust plan, which I think it is, that will help persuade the government, I'm sure, to go ahead and grant the exceptional financial support. I mean, if we were to put forward a budget now which was not consistent with that, I'm sure that would might worry the government. We might be getting phone calls from MHCLG tomorrow morning wanting to know why we're publishing a budget which is not realistic.
Yes, yeah. No, I'll leave it for a minute.
Can I just chip in with a question? Declan, where does your optimism come from, which leads you to think the government will settle the EFS requirement demand?
It's from what I'm told by the officers, so maybe Alison might be the better person to answer that.
Oh, sorry.
All right.
We've had, since we've known about the financial situation, we've had regular conversations with the MHCLG and SIPFA, and SIPFA work really closely with the MHCLG. And when we put the exceptional financial support application together, we followed the sort of guidance that we got from SIPFA and the MHCLG actually in terms of what we put into it. So the discussions we've had have been really positive. They can't say for sure, and we won't know for sure, as you've been told, until probably the week of the council. But all of the discussions we've had have been quite positive, and we've listened to what they've said in terms of their recovery plan and what it needs to include. And I've also had an assurance check on the EFS application that I put in terms of the figures, etc., and the backup documentations. Again, that was positive.
Okay, so have they spoken to any elected members, the leader and the deputy, for example?
No, they haven't. I don't think it's our role to start negotiating with civil servants. I think it's the job of the officers to deal with them. This is a technical matter. I know Alison had support from SIPFA in drafting the AFS application. And I did have a read of it before it went in, but this is about the officers and the Section 151 officer putting the application in. I mean, if we were not to get the funding, it would be the Section 151 officer that would make the decision on the 114 notice. It wouldn't be a matter for anybody in this council other than Alison to do that. And we will not set a balanced budget, so that's absolutely 100% guaranteed that we would be in a 114 notice, and possibly the commissioners coming in and making decisions rather than members of this council on where savings would be made.
So my last question before I take Councillor Alistair Chambers to Alison. Are the negotiations ongoing with MHCLG, or are they concluded?
You don't negotiate with the MHCLG. You have discussions, then you fill in the EFS application, and it goes through the process. So I've filled out the EFS application and followed all of the guidance. So we're waiting now to hear. We'll get an in-principle decision, hopefully the end of this week, and then final decision.
I hadn't realised that we would get something this week.
An in-principle decision, hopefully we'll get the end of this week.
And hopefully that will be good news and you'll be able to share it with all of us very quickly.
Well, I will do as soon as I get something.
Sure. Okay, we'll all be watching our inboxes on Friday.
Well, I would suggest, Andrew, that it would be something, if we do know that we've had an in principle, that it doesn't become a discussion in the public domain. It would be better to wait until the government makes the actual decision. We don't want to do anything that might scupper that by starting to debate it in public. I think we need to accept it, wait for the final decision before we debate it as something we want to put into the public domain, because an in-principle one is not a final decision. I think we should wait for a final decision. That would be my advice.
I think in that situation, I don't think you've got a cat and hell's chance of keeping it confidential. We all might sign up to it, but that will get out, and that undoubtedly will get out. Wishful thinking on your part, I think. Councillor Alistair Chambers.
Thank you, Chair. To the 151 officer, if that's acceptable. James Allison, thank you. Jeremy mentioned that the overall final decision would be with yourself if funding was not achieved. On the decision in principle, what goes against us. Based on the information you've got now, and I appreciate you're new to the council, the information you've been working with and the documents produced, what would your decision be based on a negative response with regards to the funding, a failure with the funding? What would be your position now?
I think it's clear in all of the reports that we've brought forward and this report that if we don't get EFS funding, because we're in negative balances for previous years, a Section 114 would be the only option.
Thank you very much for that. I appreciate this isn't probably an answer that you might be able to give in full, but just as a guesstimate, what percentage do you think is the chances of not getting the funding? If you could give a percentage.
I can't give you a percentage. All I can say is what I've already said, is that the discussions that we've had with MHCLG have been really positive.
And last question for now, to give other people a chance. With regards to the 6.74 gap, the budget still leaves a 6.74 unfunded position. At what point do officers accept that this gap is not just a structural deficit? And exactly which services will be cut if this gap remains at Q2? That's if we don't get the funding, I guess.
But if that's not resolved, the 6.7, yeah, I see that, and that effectively is the funding that would come from the exceptional financial support, and that would then go into a 114 notice, and frankly that would be taken primarily out of the hands of the elected members. It would be a matter for the 151 officer to recommend what could be done, and it might well be, I don't know, whether commissioners would be sent in, but speculating on where those savings would be made, I just no idea. All we've done is prepared a report which is seeking funding from the government. Is really a bridging loan until we are able to sell a number of our property assets that we've got in Gloucester. We've got a lot of them. We're absolutely an asset-rich district council, with more than £250 million worth of assets, and the proposal obviously is to draw down and sell those to cover the eventual cost of the bridging loan, the 15.5 million, and that will take it down as we start to sell the assets, along with the revenue savings, and also on top of that, the objective to boost the income from our commercial assets, the ones that we will keep. So that takes 3 or 4 years to really progress that, and that's why you need the bridging loan to cover you. So we've basically got a loan there to cover that. It's based on the fact that the government have been given a notification of the properties that are likely to be sold. Well, I'm not going to debate those tonight because, again, you don't want to fire sale, but the idea is to give you time over a period of time to dispose of assets at the correct rate and what they're worth, rather than a desperate situation that you would be in. But we're speculating now on a decision that we think is unlikely the government would do that to Gloucester City Council. I think there's about 60 other local authorities that are applying for EFS money. And I know, being at the police and crime panel this morning, there are some police and crime commissioners in similar boat as well, very close to it. Fortunately, in Gloucestershire, I don't think we're that close, though we could be close to it. So it's just one of those things. We're not the only one. The one good thing is that our officers were very, very quick when they finally worked out where we were. to speak to the government, to speak to the civil servants and make that, and start working on making that application. It's always good when you're in a problem is to go immediately to the government and let them know rather than try and hide it. So we went straight there and we've had good communications, and that's the advice I'm being told from officers, good communications from day one. And the officers have done a really good job in communicating and having discussions with MHCLG civil servants, and we've used SIPFA, who are also the organisation that advises the government on EFS applications. So we made sure we went to the right people to get the right advice to put in the best application. So I think we've done everything we can do, and it would be an absolute shock that we didn't get it. But you never know until you get the letter saying you've got it.
Is it too early to mention or remind people of the need for brevity, please? You've got a lot of cabinet members to get through, so be helpful. Declan, you've been very patient.
Yes, I just, before everyone gets too alarmed at that 6740 figure, I should point out that the figures in the money plan do not include any capital receipts. And we're assuming we get the 15.5 million, or it becomes available to us on day one. Both of those I don't think are likely to happen, but we're just being extremely cautious. So that number, I don't think it's not this. It will still keep us positive, but I don't think we're going to be anywhere near there.
Okay, cheers, Declan. Thank you. Anybody else apart from Owen who's got any questions or comments? Owen.
Thank you, Chair. You noted, Declan, that there's 2 million set aside for local government reorganisation. Can we not get that funding from the government who've thrust this upon us?
Oh, I wish. But mind you, they'll probably say, just, well, look, we're giving you all this money. I think that's dead duck, unfortunately, and we're not the only ones. It applies to everybody. It's just in our case, the timing's particularly bad. But it is in there, it's in the plan.
Anybody else? Sorry.
You also noted, Declan, that there may be further difficult decisions in future years. Have we not made all the difficult decisions already?
I honestly don't know. It really depends on how well the asset disposals go and how successful we are. I honestly can't say, but if you look in the plan itself, it's assuming that there's another £1 million worth of savings to be found next year. So there's enough difficult decisions already in there, I think, to keep us busy.
Okay, so I'm still taking people who haven't spoken before. Angela.
Thank you, Chair. Can I just ask about the green waste charges? You're putting them up. Is there any subsidy allowed for in that? Does it cover its cost, or will it cover its cost when the charges go up?
Councillor, I'm just being advised that you're jumping the gun, and we need to wait till we get to the relevant cabinet member.
Right,
Is that
okay.
okay? Yes. Cool. Other questions to Declan? Declan? No. No. Oh, sorry, Alistair. Yeah, Alistair.
Are we questioning the cabinet portfolio? Is this just about the budget at the moment?
Just looking at the running order that my assistant's given me. So I think we're still on. Well, we started with cabinet member for resources. Yeah. Yeah. So we're okay. And then we move on to cabinet member for regeneration, and then we take you. It's okay.
More questions, and then Declan has a speech to prepare, and then you've got questions. So we talked about staffing.
Sorry, I apologise for the confusion. Declan, we've moved on to you as a cabinet member for resources now with your team.
Yep, that's fine.
Okay. But before he does that, can you nip him with your other question? So, Declan, you're going to give us a short.
I'll just give you the quick summary in the format that you requested. First of all, staffing levels of 26-27, 106 FTE with 100 compared to 116.8 last year, so that's a reduction of 10.5. Rough at the minute is 10.4 FTE, that's full-time equivalents in current vacancies. You will note that yeah, because I can see a puzzled look in Terry's face there, and the reason. We know that we have to increase the capacity of finance and increase the capacity of commercial or the property portfolios. And the reason why that's not quoted in those numbers is you will actually see it in the, it's on its own line in the sort of the budget pressures and efficiency spreadsheet, you know, the one that looks like that. You'll see there's a 250 additional capacity in property and finance. The simple reason being that we've had the Local Government Association in advising us. We've yet to see, they've come up with a few proposals and I haven't seen them yet. So we just put in a one-line adjustment. So that will change whenever we finally decide on what we're going to, what structure we're going to go with. And if you just bear with me, I've just lost my page now, which is always helpful. Right, financial pressures for next, sorry, Terry, fire. Sorry, Terry, looked like he wanted to jump in. I do apologise, Chair.
Don't just look at me if you've got something to say. Yeah, of course.
Right.
But I thought, shall we wait till Declan's finished?
Just we're lost.
Okay, go.
Sorry, that was my fault.
Okay, fine.
For 1 minute, I was back chairing overview and audit and governance. Financial pressures for next year, including any potential reduction in income, there will be obviously widespread financial challenges across the council with significant savings still to be found for future years. This means that all activities being reviewed. Financial pressures for next year, including any potential reduction in income streams. There'll be I've just said that. So additional resources are required for finance and property to deliver the improvements detailed in the statutory recommendations with the recovery plan. If successful with EFS, there will also be conditions involving additional reporting, etc., which will require resources. Something I didn't mention earlier on is if we do get the EFS, there will probably be conditions attached to it, but almost certainly there will be extra reporting that we will have to do to MHCLG. And we need to look at that as regards resourcing and finance. The improvement panel will need external resources to assist with delivering the recovery plan. This will need additional funding. It could include financial advisors, property advisors, etc. Potential loss of income when the cremators are replaced. This will be minimised in how the project is delivered. Additional extra audit fee is expected above the 200,000 estimate due to us being in EFS and having statutory recommendations, so we're going to need extra auditor time. Rising costs of IT to support the delivery of services and defending against cyber attacks. Rising costs of postage is a broad pressure on all services that have a statutory duty to write to residents. There is a significant work required across our property portfolio, which I've already mentioned. And while the short-term effort and investment to review and improve how we manage and maintain our assets will create financial pressure, this work is essential to strengthen compliance, improve asset condition and deliver long-term cost benefits. We will also see an increase in voids in Eastgate Shopping Centre due to tactical removal of some tenants to ensure works can be done to the new market as part of the wider Greyfriars project. The increased cost of processing payments to the council and compliance with payment processing security. With regards to budget savings in their area for next year and how this will impact on services they provide, the fees and charges for bereavement services have been fully reviewed and compared to with other crematoriums in the area. The comparison charges were higher in the other ones that we looked at. In line with the findings, a number of the fees and charges have been increased above inflation of 3%. The estimated additional income is around about 100,000. This will be monitored closely to ensure it does not have a negative impact. Also, council-wide drive to increase electronic communications with residents to reduce the amount of post-payment sent, which reminds me I still haven't applied to have my council tax emailed to me. Increase the digital transactions with customers who are unable to access online services. With regards to the last point on your bullet points, any new income streams identified during the process, the capital project to replace the 3 cremators and complete the infrastructure works will enable the crematorium to accommodate more cremations and additional requirements, which in future years should generate additional income. And we will also be seeking to grow commercial rents across the commercial portfolio, notably King's Walk Shopping Centre, St Oswald's Forum of Office Space Plot 4 and the hotel. Finally, the main priorities for the portfolio and where they have changed as a result of the draft money plan. Obviously, priority number 1 is replacing the 3 cremators at the crematorium along with the infrastructure improvements. This needs to be completed during 26-27. The budget of 5 million is included in the capital programme in Appendix E of the budget report. The challenge is to complete these works whilst maintaining a service to mitigate any potential loss of income. Priorities for the finance service, none of this will come as any great surprise. Ensure the service has sufficient capacity and capability to ensure the breadth of activities can be delivered. The relaunch of robust budget monitoring processes to ensure that budget officers are fully engaged. That obviously is already started. Successful EFS application to deliver the recovery plan. Ensure the money plan is updated to reflect delivery. Publish the 24-25 accounts and receive the disclaimed audit, and publish the 25-26 accounts in line with the statutory deadline of June 2026. Priorities for commercial property: grow revenue through leasing, grow ancillary revenue through commercialisation and activation, drive an efficient capital programme across the property portfolio, drive efficiency through the operating platforms via the property management mandate, and drive yields and overall value of the portfolio. That's pretty much, I think that goes through the bullet points that you requested. So happy to take any questions that anybody might have.
Yeah, there's a lot of hands going up. That's really helpful. Thanks, Declan. Go on this side. We've got Anne.
Thank you, Chair. If I've done this out of sequence, apologies. I was wondering if you had any information you could share with us regarding the mutually agreed resignation scheme, as that should have concluded on the 30th of January, and whether that has actually made any savings?
From memory from the report this summer, I think we were expecting about 75,000 in a year per annum in saving. From discussions that I've heard, it's gone quite well, and maybe sometime next year we might consider doing it again.
Yeah, it has gone well. I think we've had 8 applications that we've agreed, and we've built 75k into the savings budget, so that's part of the £1 million savings target for next year, and we're thinking about possibly doing it again later in the year because we've got another £1 million savings targets for the following year.
The Chief Exec was wanting to speak.
This stage.
The questions to Declan.
Thank you, Chair. Declan. Right. Sorry, I'm a bit confused about the additional staffing, because what I'm seeing is that we're looking at 325k in additional employees in financial and corporate, and we're looking at an increase of 188k in asset management. But you said that's somewhere else in. Are these the new posts that we're talking about to balance out the team, to make sure that we've got, to use the term, capability and capacity in those teams?
Yeah, what we've done in these figures is we've got 250,000 that we put into the money plan for additional finance and property. We don't know how that'll be split yet because we haven't done the detailed work, but we've just split the 250 between 50-50 between property and finance.
And are those from day one, or will they be scheduled over the year? Because I guess we won't be in a position from the 1st of April to employ people, but because it may well take a percentage of that year before we're ready to employ people. So that's not a full year cost, is it? Or how does that work?
We've got 250,000 in total, so because we don't know what the structures are going to be at the detail, we'll have to work within that budget based on a full year.
Just one more, sorry. On the cemetery and crematorium, I mean, we know that there has been that the budget predictions on the Sem and Crem over the years have been somewhat adrift, shall we say. So what I was looking for was what were the fees and charges for last year and what are they for this year? And I can't see that. So is there an across-the-board increase there? And I mean, did I hear you say that you've looked at similar services in other authorities? Because I'm aware that obviously we've got Cheltenham up the road, and I know that people or families rather travel to the crematorium, I think down in South Gloucestershire as well. And I think it's important that we're making sure that we're in parity with those, because if we put the prices up too much, ultimately we're at risk of losing custom elsewhere.
So you're absolutely right with the income in terms of the cemetery and the crematorium. We weren't in the current year, but based on in the last few years we haven't. So we brought that down to a realistic level based on the current fees and charges. So for next year, we did a full exercise where we looked at comparisons, for facilities nearby, like you've mentioned, to make sure that inflation. We've also put a few other charges up, which should generate estimated 100,000 extra based on the new budget.
Okay, thanks. Alistair Chambers, Councillor.
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Declan, 3% increase, is that over interest rates for the crematorium, or is it 3% blanket increase on the costs? What's the approximate increased costs on the crematorium based on Councillor Pulling's questions?
It's hard to give you an exact percentage in the sense because I patiently went through with my pen and wrote down how much all of these things have gone up. Some items have only gone up by 50p. Others have gone up by, 30 quid. But I don't know what the mix is in all of those. So, I mean, for example, if you put a small thing up on photographs, you can't you have to know how many people are going to be ordering those photographs to work out what the percentage change is going to be. But it does look, I think in the report it said inflation plus 3% to reflect the fact that I don't think a lot of these prices have gone up for some time. I think that did go up a bit last year. So, but, a lot of the increases do seem to be quite modest. I could quote a few, but in the grand scheme of things, it's not necessarily relevant. Single bronze curb plaque, it's got £446. It was £13 less last year. Tablet for cremated remains 1,140, which is £34 increase on last year. So they are generally relatively modest, but it still affects. It's still not something you enjoy, particularly want to do. But I don't see any big massive changes there. I've noticed a few errors though, which we'll need to. I don't think the organ player was 200 and something last year, and now it's £28. I don't think that's probably an error. So I'll check those things up.
Thank you for advising that it's gone up 3% above interest rate and things have gone up 50p to £3. Above inflation. Cheers, thank you. I've done some checks against last year's fees and charges. I've seen that stillborn children's deaths going up to 3 months, went up 40%. Children from the death age of 3 months onwards has gone up 25%. Exclusive right for burial for 75 years has gone up 100%, from 1,200 to 2,614. Page, you've got two numbers here, 35 and 41. Oh, sorry, this is last year's budgets. So if you go to the fees and charges, crematorium fees and charges continues, and it's the section E, earthgrave. So if you look at earthgrave, obviously one of the main costs isn't the cost you chose out as a small brass plaque. Obviously the cost is negligible, even if it goes up 100%. But the actual cost we've got to be looking at is the cost of actually burying people, and that cost has gone from £1,269 up to £2,614, well over 100%, and that's for 75 years burial. And then burial for 99 years. Yep.
If you notice that we didn't have any charges for those last year because it says non-resident. So for Gloucester residents, it's not 2,614, it's 1,307.
Well, you've got the 4,355.
That's for, again, that's a category we didn't have last year. It's for a non-resident. For a Gloucester resident, it's not 4,355, it's 2,176.
Can you also check section A, crematorium fees? Stillborn child, 85, gone up to 118, approximately 40%.
That's paid by the government, so I suppose we would.
Question on parking. Noticed increase in parking has gone up. We did a departmental increase through the year, and you've just gone and done another increase, which is proposed in the budget. I find it strange that the increases still are less than they're proposed to the budget last year at overview and scrutiny. So why the increase is still less, given that the financial predicament of the council?
This is just the earlier increase. It hasn't gone up again.
You've got the increase from last year, so it's £240. Sorry, £2.40 for 2 hours, has gone to £2.60. Yeah. Okay. For 3 hours, it's £3.50. It's gone up to £44. 4 hours was £4.60. It's gone up to £5.10. Yes.
Yeah, those were the changes that happened in November.
So my point still stands. Overview and scrutiny this time last year for budget setting, the costs for parking were higher. They got the Labour amendment reduced them temporarily, but given the financial predicament of this organisation, of the authority, why have the costs not gone up to what they're proposed for last year? Given that we're in a financial predicament, do you understand what I'm saying?
I think what you're saying is that in last year's budget, we had actually put them up to a higher amount than what we have, which I didn't realise. But don't put ideas in my head, whatever you do. No, I don't think it's a fair point, and I'll look into it. So I didn't realise that.
Yeah, if you go to the overview scrutiny meeting last year and you look at the budget proposal, you'll see that every cost is larger. So 2 hours is £2.70. You're only increasing it to £2.60. Even the all-day parking was put forward at £8.50, and you're increasing it to £8.40. So I find it ridiculous that, given the financial situation of this council, near bankruptcy, that you still haven't put it up to what you proposed to put up last year. which subsequently went down following a Labour amendment. Why is that?
I hadn't realised that was the case, so I'll look into that. But yeah, it was balanced view. We just put it up in line with inflation. So, but I take your point that that might be something that might need to look at in the future.
So when you look into it, can you let us all know as a committee? That'd be really helpful, thanks. So councillor, any more questions? We'll move on.
Move on for other people, if that's okay, Chair. Thank you so much.
I don't see any other questions for Declan in that one. A lot of hands go up when I say that. So Steph, I overlooked you the last time, sorry.
Thank you, Chair. Come back to the page. So last week at the council, we were told that the EFS funding comes with, what we've submitted comes with certain conditions that we're sort of bound by. So we were told that the grant, the individual councillor grant funding was submitted in the EFS application, therefore we wouldn't be able to change it. And obviously opposition councillors are currently looking at the budget to see if we agree with your priorities, the administration's priorities, or if we wanted to make amendments. Are we able to have a copy of that EFS application so we understand what we've been bound by?
That sounds vaguely above my pay grade, but I'll have to check it up. I mean, quite possibly, but I don't know.
Just to say that what we included in the EFS application was what was in the December Cabinet report in terms of savings, but there are some things in the EFS application which are confidential, but I think it can be sent out to you, but on the basis that that's confidential, some of it. But the £1 million savings plan was based on what was in the Cabinet report in December. So that should all be familiar to you already.
Yeah, my next question was, in section 3.4, it mentions about selling assets, which you also discussed. And we've talked about the EFS, if it is approved as a bridging loan. So if we sell assets, will any capital receipt from those assets go directly straight back into paying off the EFS loan as a lump sum?
Thank you, Chair. Just a few questions of detail, Declan. On the financial and corporate, there's a 1.3 million increase. Part of that is £1 million for third-party payments. Is that what you were referring to earlier, of the additional people that we may need, and the additional reporting? Because it's £1 million, big chunk.
Forgive me, Al, when my file, which I thought was nice and easily laid out, it's a bit all over the place. I think, is it here somewhere? Is it corporate and funding you're talking about? I've got 71, page 71, corporate and funding. I don't know if I've got that. Yeah, what's the increase that you're talking about? We think it's LGR related, but you've managed to catch us out in that one. I'm not entirely sure, so we'll find out for you and report back to the committee.
Thank you, Declan. That wasn't my intention. I thought that would be the easy one. On page labelled 23, under parking, there's an other income of, it's about 100,000. What is this other income under parking? Oops.
The income from the NCP charges.
I'm surprised then that it's increased by 93,000. Have they really increased their charges that much? And are we confident we're going to get that?
It's the way the contract's been set up. I'm sort of repeating what I've been. Yeah, do you want to?
Just for clarity, just as well, it's not income, so we don't actually make an income on any of the car parks. We're duty bound to use the income to offset it back into the car parks. But if it is an ancillary income that comes in via the car parks and it's an underline, i.e. the 100,000 you're referring to, I'll double check it, but I'm pretty sure that's the NCP, which is where we bring it in. We've had a change in contracts over the past year as well. But any income that we get coming into the car parks, we have to regurgitate back into car parks for other things. But I'll double check that line for you and come back, but I'm pretty sure that's what it is in terms of the parity.
Thank you for that. And Chair, this is my final one. There's a £4 million increase in interest and capital charges and commercial property. That's quite a significant number. I just wanted to understand where that comes from.
I can answer that one for you. Just very plainly, that's the forum. So if you recall, obviously the forum has come with a significant amount of borrowing. Up until recently, the forum has been a development project, so all of the borrowing has been able to be capitalised against the project itself. The parts of the project now pretty much primarily come into practical completion. Once the development finishes, it starts to go into revenue. So we've had to assume that borrowing into the revenue codes as opposed to being able to capitalise it against the budget codes of the development. The development, for all intents and purposes, is now finished.
For Steph Chambers, was there somebody this side as well?
Councillor James.
Okay, got it. Steph.
I'll be really quick, just because we mentioned the forum, and I remember last year's prediction for the forum was something like 4 million of income, which I did question. What specifically is the projection for the income on the forum for this coming year?
Can I just check that when you say this coming year, do you mean 26-27? So 26-27, I've forecasted based on what we've got in terms of deliverable lettings. So who's in there now and who we expect to have in there. And I've also factored in rent positions in terms of rent-free periods as tenant incentives. So based on the numbers that I've got in 26-27, we'll see £820,000 of revenue in year one. But the £4 million that you refer to is still the total basis of what the forum will deliver on a full rent, full capacity basis. So when the forum is fully let and all rent periods are finished in terms of rent-free periods, the forecasted position of the forum is still 4 million, just over £4 million per annum.
So just to sort of pick up on that then, last year was a complete sort of, it was real wrong prediction really to do 4 million, because if it's 827, did you say this year? And 4 million's at full capacity and all rents, then really that was a big mistake in last year's budget.
Believe it or not, I think it was in the previous year's budget as well. Well, that's just an example of how we're being very careful and making sure that we're more realistic. That was really what the budget reset was all about. It was going through it all. And I was given a spreadsheet of the last 4 or 5 years worth of budgets and what actually happened. And it's quite instructive when you go through it, what we had budgeted and what we ended up with and how similar it was year on year on year. So we're hoping that now that we've got a new budget monitoring process up and running, that these sort of mistakes will be avoided in the future, but also it means that we've got a more realistic idea of what our actual net revenue requirement is year on year, and it's not the nice, cosy, comfortable one that we thought it was in years gone by. So, although it's doesn't sound as encouraging as it might have been in previous years, I think it is considerably more realistic.
Excuse me, Councillor Alistair Chambers, were you indicating?
Thank you, Chair. To the head of place, that's okay. With regards to the car park charges, you said it gets regurgitated back into the car parks. Can you give me an example what that entails?
Yeah, so it should all come into one pot, and then essentially what happens is there's a reconciliation process that looks at all of the fees and operational costs of running the car park. At the end of it, you end up with a certain amount of cash, and then that cash gets divvied up onto things like maintenance, capital works if it's required, some security works if it's required, any general operational costs that we need to use on the car parks themselves. And that's typically where it goes. Most of it this year, in this current year, has been spent on reactive maintenance of the car parks where it's been needed.
Given that, appreciated before your time, there's still sections of the car park shut off for, it's been many years now. Would you say that that hasn't been the case with regards to maintenance in the past? Seeing as there is significant issues around Longsmith car park still, on the facade, on the outside, the copings at the top, the cladding, the cabling, the entrance metalwork, the lobbies, the stairwells, the fire escapes. Would you say that hasn't been the case? They've been spending the money elsewhere?
No, I wouldn't say that's the case. I'd say it's the case that you've got a very, okay, well then I can answer or I don't, but you've got a very complicated, very, very run-down multi-storey car park, which has got some severe issues. Maintenance has been spent on it. A significant amount of maintenance has been spent on it, continues to be spent on it. But the reality is that car park is nearing the end of its life, and some decisions need to be made about what happens with it next, which is what we're trying to do. And we'll be bringing forward some papers over the next 6 months as to what the long-term plan is for Longsmiths, which is, I'm assuming, which one you're talking about, but that's the reality.
Thank you for your response. I heavily disagree with that comment. I was here before yourself, and I was the one that actually raised the concerns around the car park, which got to shut down. There's significant issues with the various other car parks that I'd like to draw your attention to. I'll send you over dilapidations of the current state car park situation, because it's not good.
Yeah, that's fine. I'm happy to walk them with you as well.
Okay, thanks. Karen James?
Thank you, Chair. I just wondered if you could tell me what the substantial increase in employee costs in the IT department is, please.
We just need to do more. Actually, Ian, do you mind, Ian, taking that question from, because you've got the technical expertise?
There we go. So the increase in the employee is, well, two things. It's, if you look at the variation, this is really kind of the sort of catch up of the kind of the staff that we need to deliver the service. This is making sure that we've got the right cyber provision and things like that. There is also some provision where we are looking at kind of where the structure is at the moment, and along those lines, really we are looking at kind of where we need to kind of fulfil the right sort of staff and have the right levels of expertise. That's really it. I mean, I would also say that there is a sort of base uplift in the kind of cost of our staff in IT, and again, that is sort of contained within that, which is we're expecting, and my apologies, Alison, you might have a better answer on this, but we uplift the current price of staff as well, and that is included within that as well. The IT team has around about 10 people in it, but there's also a kind of wider staff that do quite a lot of different things. So there's quite a lot of full-time employees within that, and so that uplift is included in that as well. But really, we're looking at staff that we need to keep the organisation running and keep it safe from cyber attacks.
I think that was your last question, Declan, I think. Okay, so can I just thank you and your team as well, thank you. So we move to regeneration. So that is... So I'm just conscious of time. So Councillor and John. So Councillor Leader, just a brief introduction and view of time. That'd be helpful, please. Thank you.
I'm quite happy to give you a very quick summary. But basically, for 2026-27, there will be 16.6 full-time equivalent members of staff. That's an increase of 1.5 members of staff. There are currently 2 full-time vacancies. There's not much in the way of pressures, financial pressures in the portfolio, because most of it is funded by capital grants and you know, such as the Greyfriars project and stuff like that. And the forum is mostly delivered now, and it's up to our other team to get all those offices fully let. There might be an impact on funding for local government elections if they go ahead in 2027 because of local government reorganisation. There is not much in the way of any savings required in this one, or can be done, although we're reviewing our website to improve accessibility, and we're looking at trying to use email where we can rather than postal services for the electoral registration team. That would cover help reduce those costs. I don't think there's any new income streams of note. And main priorities for the portfolio, well, I'll say, has been to complete the forum, to deliver the Greyfriars project, which is a big one, and it's quite a tight timescale. It's all got to be done and dusted by March 2028. And of course, we're taking up opportunities to deliver other regeneration projects when the opportunity arises. We know that, for example, and we've had an inquiry in from a developer who wants to build housing at St Stephen's Church off the Bristol Road, and they're in pre-app conversations. I can't tell you any more than that, but they did come and talk to Andy and me about 6 months ago, and they put the application in. Let's hope it gets to an opportunity where then, in fact, there's a proper planning application and a project that gets delivered. But our real issue is that there's no spare cash, but we've got a fairly good team, and to some extent, some other opportunities that might happen might well be because we'll be having conversations with organisations like Homes England to look at whether they can help fund some of the urban regeneration around the city centre in providing more residential accommodation to bring more life into the city centre and to add to the benefits that the King's Quarter regeneration is going to add to the city's success. that's about it. Any questions on the budget? I'm
That's
quite
really
happy.
good. Questions, members? No questions? One question. Yep.
Thank you, Chair. On page 18, under Democratic and Electoral Services, there is a £48,640 saving. What's that about? Thank you, John.
Thank you, Chair. So we think that's to do with the changeover in monitoring officer arrangements. But just to reassure you, I'm in a very live and active conversation with the new monitoring officer about bolstering the Democratic and Electoral Services team so that she has the capacity to do the monitoring officer job, and the Dem and Electoral Services team are not overly stretched by asking them to cover across too many roles. So we haven't forgotten the comments that Councillor Stephanie Chambers made at a previous meeting about needing to make sure that that team is properly resourced to cover for Tanya stepping up to do the monitoring officer role. So that's a reflection really of the change in the monitoring officer arrangements rather than anything else, we think.
And just one more on page 19. Let me just find it. There we go. Communications. Two questions. Employees 125 and 50. Could you tell us how many people are in that team for our 125k? And secondly, supplies and services at 116 has been wiped out in this year. I might assume that's something to do with the transfer from the county to the city. It is. Okay, but just going back to the first question then, how many people are we employing for our 125k?
We have a very slim communications team. The county council has around 25 employees working in communications. That equates to about 5 per district council, and I think that's the normal number of officers working it for other district councils. This includes 1 part-time officer running at 22.5 hours a week, and then another officer, the communications lead, working for 30 hours a week, and whether that's going to alter in the next year. But they are under considerable pressure, and we have real problems when one of them is on holiday or one of them is ill. And I can think members are aware of the problems that happened over Christmas over the refuse collection. That was an example where one of the communication members was dealing with firefighting to some extent because of the public misunderstanding about what was happening. And that's an example where we need to plan ahead. And bear in mind as well that one of these members is also working with the county group communication team over the local government reorganisation process as well. So they will be working on that, dealing with the inquiries. A lot of that work is also that they're doing is also dealing with press inquiries and stuff like that. We get problems coming in, there's a crisis or something like that. And if we were to have a crisis that this council need to deal with, then we need to probably put out communications. You'll see this morning I had an email in about a pony that's been left at Westgate Park, and people are concerned about the pony, which I gather is about 8 years old. We've no idea who owns that pony, but our communication team put out a note and made a story about it and put it on Facebook. So hopefully that might encourage people that know who owns the pony, if anybody does. But that's an example of the work that the communication team has to deal with. So there's all those sort of things. So we have a very lean organisation, and we have problems if one of them is off on sick or one of them's on leave, of actually dealing with the pressures that they're under. And we know that the senior lead is doing more hours than he has been employed for. So he's working well over his employed hours because of the pressure that he's on.
Can I just check I've got those figures? So you said one post at 22.5 hours and one post at 30 hours? Yes. Thank you.
So I conclude questions to Cabinet Member for Regeneration. I think so. Oh, sorry, Esther. Yeah.
Thank you, Chair. Just going through my things, right. You mentioned the Greyfriars project, and I touched on this last week with Councillor Wilson. And I really just want to get down to the sort of crux of this issue. So we've received something like 11 million levelling up for that project, roughly. And the government have given us that money already, haven't they? Now, to my understanding, and I'm quite sure my understanding's right because it come from quite a good, reliable person, that we have dipped into that money. It might be ring-fenced on paper somewhere, but that actual 11 million has been utilised to bolster this council during this period of sort of tightness. Now, are we relying on that EFS money to come in to be able to deliver that Greyfriars project, or do we have the whole 11 million still ready and waiting, sat in an account?
We're using the money that we've got to deliver the Greyfriars regeneration, and I don't know whether any officers can actually answer the point you're making, because you've made a charge, but you haven't been very specific. Alison.
Sorry, press the wrong button. Just in terms of that funding, we have enough money in our cash flow to honour that LUF funding that we've got in place. In terms of our treasury management decisions, we use our cash flow instead of taking out borrowing, so that reduces the amount of revenue costs we've got on borrowing. So we only take the borrowing out when we absolutely need to in terms of cash flow, and that's what any business would do to reduce your revenue costs. But we've got enough in cash flow to fund that if needs be.
Thank you for that. So we use the cash flow, but do we have enough cash flow in to meet all of our current liabilities, including the Greyfriars project?
We have enough funding at the moment to honour our current commitments, but we need we've asked for the EFS funding to help with our negative balances position. We won't take that borrowing out unless we absolutely need to. But so if you get EFS capitalisation direction, it's a permission to borrow if you need to borrow. It's not a grant or anything, it's permission to borrow.
Okay, so going back to the original question, if we didn't get the EFS funding and then we have to issue a Section 114, we still have the money set aside to deliver Greyfriars.
We have that money set aside, but we'll have to make lots and lots of different decisions if we issue a Section 114. So that we would have to consider that and talk to the government about that funding. But we would have to make lots and lots of other decisions, because if you look at Appendix A and our financial situation without EFS funding, the sort of savings we'd have to make are huge for a council of our size.
Thank you. Just my last question was, it was just a little bit of a correction where you mentioned at the beginning that I was going to address before, was you said we haven't set a correct budget for 6 years, and the cyber incident was December 21, wasn't it? So I think it would have been the 5th budget away. So I presume the one before the cyber incident was actually set correctly.
This will be the 6th year when we sorted it out, I think. But I'm on my regeneration portfolio rather than my statement I made at the beginning as leader of the council. Maybe you can challenge me at full council if you feel like you want to do that.
Okay, moving on this side, Alistair Chambers, and we'll wrap it up. Move on.
Cheers. This is just going back to the question Terry asked earlier, just to get my understanding. So on communications, so the £125,000 plus 50 quid, 125k basically, is for the 50 hours a week approximately for the two part-time positions, and the 116,000 is a saving for the county. Is that correct?
The 116,000 is the money that was in the budget for supplies and services for the previous year that was put in the budget, and it was the same figure, in actual fact, that we put in. It was the cost that we paid Gloucestershire County Council for providing our communication service. So we employed one of the same members of staff directly through the County Council, and they were transferred 2 bit over. And we also employed who used the services of some senior communications officers at the County Council. So that was the fee that we paid. We brought that back. We brought that back in house, and we 2 bit over one of the officers, and then we employed another officer to fill the gap, to fill the more senior role that was being carried out by the County Council.
So the £9,000 is what we're paying now extra to what we were paying.
I think the £9,000 is covering the cost of inflationary costs. It wasn't increased in the 1 year, and that price, that service fee would have come up anyhow if we carried on using the County Council.
So is that a question too? Okay, so can we move on? So Jeremy, if you stay there, you're going to cover culture and leisure, I think. And thank you to Mr. McGinty, Mr. Hearn. Thank you. Okay, Jeremy, sorry to hear that you're having to cover for your cabinet member who's not very well. Hope she gets well really soon. I doubt she's watching this tonight, but if by some chance she can't sleep and she is, and she wants to get off to sleep, she's doing the right thing. So just wish her a speedy recovery and see you soon. Jeremy.
No, she's not feeling well, and that's why we suggested that she stays at home rather than come here. The stress of being in front of you lot might made her ill. Yeah. First of all, staffing levels. The 26-27 staffing levels will be 42.4 full-time equivalents compared to 45.6. There's currently a vacancy from last year. There's currently a vacancy of 1.22. The staff employed will go down lower once we have surrendered Blackfriars back to English Heritage. They take over the operation and decide what they want to do. We know that there's been interest from private businesses to take it over, and whether they successfully negotiate with English Heritage, I don't know. Financial pressures, achieving the budgeted income levels at the Guildhall, always a problem. The financial costs of the delays in the capital works at GL1, I mean, that fundamentally happened because Freedom Leisure came back to us and said they realised they couldn't reclaim the VAT on the major works that were planning for GL1. And it was therefore agreed that we would effectively take over that management of that project, so that the VAT that was used to pay for services, supplies, construction, everything else could be reclaimed. There are issues with the Guildhall, that there might be competition from the University of Gloucester campus and patch related to the hiring of rooms, whether we meet the income targets for destination marketing. Then I think we've got proposed budget savings in areas, the operating hours for the museum, withdrawing of the operating of Blackfriars Priory. Again, that would seem to, it's a really good building and facility, but I think it's one of those that needs to be operated by the private sector. It's not the council's job really to be operating a wedding venue, and I think private operators are much better than ourselves to do that. It's sad that we have to hand it back, but the rents were going up year after year after year. There is proposed budget savings for the area. So the programme at the Guildhall will be more commercially driven. I'm more likely to ask third parties to operate hire rooms rather than for us to operate something and take the commercial risk of doing it. It's better to hire the main Guildhall out to someone who wants to operate a major event, and we know what the income is, rather than for us necessarily to do it, hire the acts and everything else and take that commercial rent. I think that's one of the things we want to do. And then switching the leisure contract I've mentioned before, and there will be some savings because of festivals and events. Any new income, we're introducing new higher rates and for filming at the Guildhall. And I don't know whether there's other increases. Louise is going to be more expert in answering your questions. So I'm sorry, I'm not an expert on this portfolio, but I'm trying my best, Chet. So this is why we have really good members of the cabinet who take on and delegate. They've got delegated responsibility to understand their brief and to be able to deal with it, and also to work cleverly with the officers to make sure we operate this council as best we can. I think that we've still got the commitment with a 3-year commitment to Together Gloucester as well. I think we're coming to the final year of that one as well, which hands out grants to organisations that want to operate an event of some note. I'll leave members now to ask questions.
Yeah, that's really fine. Thank you. Questions? Hands not shooting up. No questions? I don't believe it. Pardon? Sorry, Anne. Apologise.
Thank you, Chair. You mentioned Together Gloucester, you said that's coming up to the end of its current planning. Any aspirations to continue with that? As I think the idea around that is bringing money in to sort of increase the general pot that's available. I was wondering if you know whether you feel it's been successful or whether it's something that will continue.
Yeah, it has been a very successful programme, and it is seeking to make a step change in the size and the diversity of audiences that participate and engage with culture in the city. And the feeling of Gloucester Culture Trust, who are the people leading that project, is that that's a longer project than 3 years. So they are currently working to secure further funding to continue the project beyond this year. And, you know, would seek for Gloucester City Council to continue to be a partner in that work.
Lovely. Thank you very much.
No more questions for Jeremy? Councillor Steph Chambers.
Thank you. It's been discussed, particularly when we were talking about, I can't remember what the Docks 200, is that what it's called, like the old tall ships thing that we're going to celebrate, that there were different stages. I think it was gold, silver and bronze, depending on how much income could be generated for it. And in that was, I suppose this could be a question for Jeremy, there was a part on sponsorship. Now, at council last week, you said that sponsorship leads to corruption. And if we were to look at some sort of sponsorship, how could we justify any council contracts going forward? Because it could lead to corruption if people sponsored us. How do you think that plays out in the culture portfolio, where we're actively looking for sponsorship?
I think that's a totally different situation. Sponsoring events and getting involved in events, completely different from the sponsoring of the civic offices, and that was the issue I was talking about. I think it's not wise that the civic offices should be funded by sponsorship. I've got no problems with sponsorship when it comes to events. People sponsoring events, that's fair enough. But continue sponsoring individuals who serve on this council would be wrong.
So where do you define the difference? Because I think your words were that if we were to get sponsorship, and then those people then went for a contract. So would anybody that sponsored events be disqualified from applying for council contracts? Because it doesn't kind of balance with what you said.
Well, let's go back and hear what I said and what your memory is, because it's not the first time that you've said I said something and I checked it and I didn't say it. It's precisely the same way. And this is, I think, something that is outside the culture portfolio.
Sorry, Chair, it directly affects the budget for the. So I want to know if he's still going to continue with the sponsorship in the culture, which he says he is. But it does directly affect the budget, so it's not outside this. And if, just to correct the record there, if there's anything you said I've said that I haven't, because I've also checked things, then, and I usually check it before I say it, so let me know.
Yeah, well, I know you probably do check it before you say it, and you've done so before and got the words wrong, but never mind. This is nothing, Chair, this is nothing to do with the cultural portfolio. I've made it quite clear. I'm happy to see sponsorship of events and everything else. What I'm not happy to see is the sponsorship of posts that are part of this council, and that's a different situation altogether.
Okay, let's just check the records, the tape. Okay, so we've got a lot of hands going off. Councillor Alistair Chambers.
Sorry, can I just add something about the sponsorship point, please? It's just in terms of events, you know, it would be what qualifies somebody as a good sponsor for an event comes down to them being relevant and associated with the ethos of that particular event or project. You know, you look for a sponsor to be a positive ambassador for the programme that you're trying to deliver and to help you develop audiences for it. So it would have to be done, when it comes to sponsorship for events, it would have to be done credibly and in line with the ethos of whatever programme we were delivering.
Thank you. Does that mean that you would refuse sponsorship if you didn't feel it was appropriate sponsorship?
Yes, possibly, because also sponsorship from particular sources might undermine funding that we were receiving from lottery funders, for example. So yeah, it's a delicate balance that has to be struck.
Sorry, Chair, just one further thing that come from that, because there was an incident that occurred several years ago where certain, I think it was newspapers were mentioned in a report and some were favoured by officers rather than others. And so who would make that determination? Because it's down to a kind of, like you said, it's a careful balance. But how is that determined? Because if we're looking for sponsorship and somebody determines that not relevant, but who's the judge and jury on that? That's what I'm saying.
In the case of Gloucester 200, the planned programme for 2027, we're delivering that, as it states in the business case briefing note, through a partnership with Gloucester Culture Trust and the Canal and River Trust and a number of other partners. So I think it would have to be for that group to review and discuss, and for us to take appropriate advice from, in my case, the Cabinet Member for Culture, but in the case of the other partners, their trustees, to input into a final decision.
Thank you, Chair. Are you proud of Gloucester's cricket, football and rugby, grassroots?
Of course I am, and I go to see Gloucester City Football Club on many occasions. Some members of this council turn up as well. And I even as a local councillor, sponsored kids learning to play football on Seabert Street Rec.
Thank you for clarifying that. Why have you put up cricket pitches up 20%, football pitches up 30%, and rugby pitches up 30%? There's quite a significant increase in costs.
They cover the cost of maintaining. I mean, what's happened in this council, Chair, is that quite a number of fees and charges have got to the point where they've not risen to we actually not covering the cost of maintenance or staffing and things like that. So you've got to balance it out. I think these the fees and charges were assessed about how they related to the cost of hiring fees and pitches in other parts of the county. It costs money. It costs money to hire things and you've got to cover the cost. And we all know that this council's finances are precarious, and that's part of the proposals that are part of our exceptional financial support application. And we've got to do these things. We've got to make some hard decisions. But Alistair, it'd be nice to see you at the stadium. Next match, I think, is on Saturday. Come and watch the game. Help fund Gloucester City Football Club and cheer them on. They might get promotion this year.
Well, if I come play a game of football, you play a game of rugby with me.
Hey, I'm Radley. Moving on. Thanks.
Thank you, Chair. We've got some discussions here regarding the Guildhall and the amount of income that it can generate. And one of the challenges with the Guildhall is its street presence. As you've also mentioned, there's a bit more competition in terms of meeting rooms. Are there any plans, any thinking to try and draw a bit more attention to the sort of that door footprint of the Guildhall?
Well, we're limited on what we can do on the street because obviously it's not owned by City Council, it's highways. We have got plans with the new brand to be putting it in the windows and more prominently on the exterior of the building. But it is a challenge, the visibility on the high street. On Eastgate, sorry, I completely agree. We are working to offer something different at the Guildhall compared to some of those other venues to ensure that we can sustain our level of hires. And just to say that in 25-26, we've hit our target and we've had the highest level of venue hire income since before COVID. So that business is growing. It's just if we can sustain it, given the competition, is where we're a little bit concerned.
Lovely. Thank you for the clarification. And it's good to hear that the Guildhall business is growing. That's really, really good to hear. So thank you.
Thank you, everybody. So I think that concludes your stint as cabinet member for Culture and Leisure Councillor. So I see Sebastian's already heading towards the interview table with the MD. And then community engagement, if you can be ready to take over, please. Thank you. Yeah. But, so Sebastian, while you're settling yourself, like the others, just a brief introduction, please. Okay.
Thank you, Chair. Good evening. The current staffing levels for 26-27 will be 27.5 full-time employees, full-time equivalent, compared with 26.7 full-time equivalent last year, which is an increase of 0.7 FTE. And there are currently 1.0 full-time equivalent current vacancies. Financial pressures for next year, including any potential reduction in income streams, There are widespread financial challenges across the council, which you're all aware of, with significant savings still to be made for future years. This means that all activity in my portfolio is being reviewed. Fees and charges will be increased, or some new charges will be introduced to cover service costs. There are risks associated with the recyclate markets, which are currently unstable, and there will be the introduction of a new recycling stream, plastic film, which will create a resource pressure, as it will be mandatory for all councils to collect from the 31st of March 2027. There are also some ongoing tree works following the tree survey, which was done to manage the risk of our trees. The proposed budget savings in my area for next year there are no savings identified, but all spending is being reviewed. Fees and charges are being increased to ensure we are more aligned with other local authorities, and costs are recovered where possible from non-statutory services. And there are some changes to the countryside unit. Any new income streams identified during the process, there are currently 2. There are some fees and charges, as we've heard, and there are grants from the extended producer responsibility, which is to cover the potential loss of income resulting from changes to packaging for producers. Finally, the main priorities for the portfolio, and whether any have changed as a result of the draft money plan, it's ensuring the smooth delivery of waste and recycling services, improving the efficiency of grounds and street services, including delivering new initiatives such as the glyphosate reduction programme, targeting graffiti on council-owned land and property as one of the corporate plan priorities, and ensuring we are ready for introducing new recycling streams in 2027. And as always, I'm happy to take any questions.
Chief Sebastian, thank you very much. It's a nice canter around your portfolio. So Karen, then Angela, and that's it so far.
Thank you, Chair. I've got a couple of questions. In the Appendix D Financial Recovery Plan, it says new charges, waste and grounds should raise 200,000. Can you tell me what those charges are, please?
So the wastes and grounds, so it's mainly introducing new charges for things like bins, so recycling receptacles, bins, and waste and recycling services, and also the parks and the sports pitches and things like that. Some charges for those.
Okay, thank you. And also, I see that we're looking to save 100,000 over a review of the management of the countryside unit. Given that the Gloucester Wildlife Trust are a charity with their own financial pressures, has any contingency plan been made to deal with this if they don't want to take over the running of it?
I'm guessing it will just stay as it is, but I think Ruth knows a bit more about it.
So we are in discussions with the Wildlife Trust about what that might look like. There is another organisation in this local area that we think have got the ability to do what we would want them to do at the moment. So at the moment there isn't a plan B. It would be reviewing how the council continue to run it, and if there are any changes we would have to make if the negotiations that we're having with the Wildlife Trust aren't successful.
Can I add to that, Chair? Thank you. So the plan B is basically looking across the rest of our council expenditure to see if we can find some displacement savings to replace that one, if that one is not able to be delivered. It applies to all of the savings outlined in the money plan. If we can't achieve it by plan A, then we have to look across the rest of our spending to identify a plan B.
And who was next? Angela, I think.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, just to ask about the green waste in particular, the charges are going up. Is that fully covering the cost of carrying out the service, or are we still subsidising it at all?
The garden waste has already gone up. So we took that decision last year and it was implemented in January. And broadly across all of these,
services, the aim is to cover our costs, which we haven't historically been doing. So garden waste is obviously a discretionary service. We don't have to provide it. We do, but we have been subsidising it up till now. I think that's correct, isn't it? Yeah, it's more in line. We're not making profits on pretty much any of these things, or we won't do still. But we need to more cover our costs involved in providing this service.
Okay with that, councillor? Okay, Mr. Pullen, councillor.
Thank you, Chair. Thanks for the reminder on what I assume you're talking about, soft plastics from March 2027. That's good news, because that's one area where we're not recycling at the moment. So great stuff. But of course, if we're going to be ready to implement that from March 2027, then we're going to have to be tooling up and committing resources for it in this financial year to be ready for 31st of March next year. Is that the case? And have you built those costs into the budget for this year?
Yes, yes, and we've already been discussing it. We had a quarterly performance meeting with Ubico last week, and the managers were all talking about it already. There's challenges involved in the type of vehicle you need, because it's not the same necessarily as what we currently have. So there may be some procurement of fleet involved, and I think the process for recycling it, I'm not an expert on recycling film, but I think it's difficult, isn't it?
So a couple of our neighbours are actually doing trials at the moment, and we are going to learn from them. Neighbouring councils, yeah. It's one of the most difficult things to collect. You can imagine some of the challenges that we're going to have around litter on windy days. So just things like how it's presented. So I understand, I think Cheltenham and the Forest of Dean are currently doing trials. So we are going to be learning, obviously Ubico deliver their services. We're going to be learning as much as we can from the trials that are happening, so that by the time we come to do it, we can cover all bases. But it is going to be a very difficult thing for us to collect, and it isn't going to bring in a huge amount of income because it's so light. So there's going to be no weight to it. So yeah, it's going to be challenging, and it obviously won't, it won't cover the costs, the amount of effort that we've got to be in. Hence why the government are giving us some grants at the moment.
Okay, that's really good. Thank you, Tree.
Thank you. As we know from previous discussions in council and things, the concessionary rate for bulky items is being removed. And I also see from this that we are going to start charging for replacing waste receptacles when they get damaged, stolen, worn out. Are we going to be looking over the course of the year at whether the revenue that we get and that we take in is enough to cover the outgoings from fly tipping and things like that, which I think probably is going to rise? People trying to pack their stuff around bins in the park, which is a problem we've had quite a few times in Moorland. People not bothering with domestic receptacles and just chucking it around a public bin. Are we going to be reviewing to check that we're not shooting ourselves in the foot with this?
Thank you. So the first part, the concessions that we've removed, is largely to do with the way it's measured and the way eligibility is actually tracked. So currently we do that on whether the customer receives housing benefit or council tax benefit, and we administer those so we can actually check that. You don't administer universal credit, so it's difficult to check that. The green waste and the bulky waste, they are discretionary services as well. We don't have to provide them, but we choose to. Obviously, it's a good thing to provide them, but we do need to cover our costs, and we haven't been doing so. In the concession, we actually lost money. I think that's right to say. With regard to the
bins, the replacement bins and the recycling receptacles, the bags, the boxes, you can currently order them free of charge on the council website. They will be delivered usually within 48 hours, completely free. We are currently, you may be shocked or surprised to know, delivering over 800 a month. There's a crew of 2 who only do that. So they have a vehicle and the 2 staff at a cost of 100,000 a year. They have the receptacles, which cost 160,000 a year for all the replacement ones. And that's what they're doing. They're delivering those. Do a very good job. It's incredibly efficient, completely free. I would like to see those crew delivering fewer of those receptacles and actually being able to redeploy to other priorities for this council, such as graffiti removal.
Okay, so are you effectively saying that it will work out cheaper to pick up fly tipping than to carry on with giving people receptacles and having concessions? Because, yeah, whether it's a statutory thing or not, people will fly tip if they don't have what they feel is an affordable way to get rid of waste. And with staffing levels, there's absolutely no way that we are going to catch every fly tipper.
We have increased, of course, the maximum fine, which was partly at the urging of the Labour group. But I don't agree with your contention that people don't have an effective way to dispose of waste and recycling. I mean, we're not doing away with anything in terms of bins or recycling receptacles. What we are doing is charging a modest fee to cover our costs. And a lot of these things, you'll see that the green recycling box is going to be £7. And that's £6 for the box to cover the cost and £1 for the delivery. The blue bag, the blue sack would be £3. Now that's the price of a cup of coffee. It's not something any of us got into politics to do, to introduce charges for things, but I think they're necessary. We've got to make these savings and got to raise this revenue. And the question will always come back to, what else do you want to cut if you want to pay for these savings?
I'm going to take that opportunity of pause to remind people, to point out we've just gone 8:30, so we need a show of hands to carry on for another hour. Can I suggest that we do carry on for another hour? Okay, that's all done. Thank you very much. Alistair, and then Alwyn.
Let me remind the chair that says Alwyn there, not Alistair.
Oh, yeah, sorry, I didn't put my glasses on.
Thank you, Chair.
Okay, I'm going to make progress, Alwyn.
Thank you, Chair. Sebastian, I assume environmental health fees are under your portfolio as well? It surprised me to see that the commercial charges for rodent control are a flat fee and irrespective of the size of the property. Could we not charge more for larger commercial properties? I can understand for domestic, a fixed fee makes sense, but for the commercials, should we not be looking at the size of the property first?
We were discussing this today, weren't we? Can you elaborate?
Yeah, so, I mean, we have had to do quite a quick review. We've done a full review of fees and charges. There is definitely more in some areas that we can do. So the advice from officers is that this is an appropriate increase, and particularly with the rodent control and the pest control services, we pass the cost directly back to the contractor that delivers it for us. So previously we have been losing money, so we've been paying the contractor back more than we have taken from the customer. That will no longer be the case, but we are going to be covering our costs from April onwards. However, beyond that, there might be more we can do to review that specific service area, particularly, as you've said, for some larger businesses, larger restaurants, for example. I mean, the only thing I would say, particularly about restaurants, is obviously in terms of food hygiene, we want it to be affordable and we want them to do it. So, you know, there is always a balance in terms of, you know, quality and kind of pushing costs. So, you know, we have to take officers' advice on that a bit.
Thank you, Chair. As a Cabinet Member for Environment, how much has the hedge nuisance fee gone up? The hedge nuisance fee inspection?
I think it'll say somewhere on there, but I don't know off the top of my head. Do you know?
University challenge where they just pass a question up and down till they find somebody who knows the answer, no disrespect.
That's near enough 20% increase. Why has it gone up so much?
I think it's a service that we don't particularly want to have to deliver, so we price some of these things accordingly. I mean, another one is graffiti on private property. We will do it if the customer wants to engage our services, but actually it's more of a cost to us. So I think in those instances we put the price to a level where it's, should we say, a deterrent.
Thank you. You mentioned earlier that concessions, council tax support and housing benefit, ones you can monitor, while universal credit's something you can't. Why is that the case that you've removed the concessions then for household receipt for bulky items?
Yeah, in my answer earlier, and at full council, I said that mostly people now are moving on to universal credit, so moving away from those two benefits that I mentioned. So it's more difficult for us to. We don't administer universal credit, so it would be a lot of admin, and I don't think that actually we can get the information in some cases. No, we can't.
My point to that is no one's asking you to monitor universal credit. We're just asking you still to give the concessions for council tax support and housing benefit, those right do you need. So bulky waste items has gone up from £26 to £25 to £30. Household support for people that were paying £13 have gone up to £30. And green household waste has gone up from £55 to £60. Are you serious about recycling in this city?
Yes, extremely.
On that basis, why does scrap metal recycling applications now go up from £299 to £407?
I mean, I think, Chair, if we're going to go through every single fee increase, we're going to be here a long time. And, you know, I'm happy to go over things in great detail, but
Yeah, I think the councillor is entitled to an answer. It's your budget, but it's your budget.
As has been stated, I think, in some of the reports, the covering report, and also been stated a few times by portfolio holders, the vast majority of fee changes that we're talking about this evening are either as a result of inflationary increases or as a result of extensive benchmarking we've done with either near neighbours or national, where we've been able to do so. So we don't believe the fees that are proposed in here are outlier fees in terms of national or local pricing, but just a realistic reappraisal of what our actual costs are. As Ruth just said in answer to the previous question, with the rat catchers, we were paying more to the contractor than we were getting in from the customer. So the taxpayer is effectively subsidising that, and this is a chance to put the cost not on the taxpayer subsidy, but on the person that's paying for the service.
Cool. Right, two more questions. Thanks. With regards to allotments, I noticed that they've gone up significantly from £29.36 to £49 for a standard half plot, and for a full plot, it's gone from £58 to £98, nearly £100, near enough 100% double increase. Surely you'd want to promote organic food and healthy living. Why is this not the case and reflected in the cost of the allotments?
Thank you very much. Yeah, it's a question of benchmarking against other councils. What we were not doing was we were not covering our costs. We still won't, but actually it will do more to cover the cost of the service. We are increasing modestly some of the costs associated with allotments to claw back some of the income we lose. Total income last year for allotments was just 27,000, and that didn't cover the cost of repairs and maintenance, water supply, and the salary of the member of staff that we employ. So the cost of the service is actually more like 42,000 a year. So the increased charges will actually go a long way to funding the service in future.
Thank you. Just my last sort of questions now. My concerns around rodent control and disinfecting the premises. There was a second visit fee, which was a £25 fee, which included VAT. That £25 fee for a second visit has gone to £52 as a standard flat rate. Same with disinfectant, it was £28, and now it's gone up to £60, including VAT. That's a significant increase for domestic properties. Are you not going to exacerbate the already difficult rat situation?
Yeah, I think if you look at commercial pest control, which we have, you know, that they will charge the same fee per site visit. So they'll come back a second, third time, and they'll still charge the same fee. We don't. We actually reduce it for the second and third visit. And so, again, it's an example of where we're not covering our costs as a council. So we don't want to obviously discourage people from booking these things in, but similarly, we need to cover our costs. And, you know, it's all these fees and charges, whilst unpleasant to do, they are a matter of, often they're a matter of a few pounds to the resident, but they will make a significant difference to this council where we are in significant dire straits financially.
Can we move on? Karen James, and then Steph, Karen, and then Steph. And I think that
Thank
wraps
you,
it up.
Chair. Just wanted to elaborate really on a point that Councillor Chambers de Boos made about the possibility of increased fly tipping. One of the budget amendments that was accepted from the Labour group last year was for some mobile cameras to monitor known fly tipping spots. I wonder whether I could have an update on these, please.
The most recent was that we were looking at options, and I think Councillor Pullen had had an update, but I can get a more up-to-date update from that. I think that was only about 6 weeks ago. I think that that Councillor Pullen asked about it, but I'm more than happy to get an update on that. It's taken a little while to find what we want.
Thank you, Chair. My first question, it's about the Ubico payments. And looking at the spend data, it seems that we sort of roughly pay between 827,000 a month to 832 a month. And then going to the budget, it shows on the one line a reduction of 2.5 million. Just finding that. I think that was in waste and recycling. But then so realistically, I wanted to know what that reduction is, but then I notice in street care, it's got an increase of 2 million. So are you moving certain things around the budget, or are we getting a 2.5 million reduction in waste and recycling? And what's the increase in street care?
So I think that's an accounting change. I don't think that's actually about service delivery. I think it's just about us trying to make sure that our budgets reflect the right things sitting in the right parts of the budget. So I think it's an accounting correction as opposed to actually changing operational delivery, because there isn't anything that significant in any of those parts of service that will change operationally on the ground. So I think Ali probably can't confirm, but I think that's what's happening there. It's about making sure the right things are reflected in the right places.
Okay, thank you. And obviously, I might be wrong, but looking at the spend data, that's probably our biggest bill each month. I hope it is, I didn't see one bigger. Are we as councillors or the Overview and Scrutiny Committee able to see what that breaks down as each month, like what we're paying for?
So I'm pretty sure we've invited UPCO to come on an annual basis and talk to the committee, ask any questions about spend, about budget. I think they are coming to talk about their annual business plan as well. So that might again be a good opportunity to ask, but there's no reason why we can't share some of the information on what the spend looks like across the UPCO contract on an annual basis and a little bit more broadly, because obviously the waste education team do a little bit and they're part of our team as opposed to UPCO. So more than happy to come and talk to the committee in more detail if that would be helpful.
Yeah, I suppose it's more to the point that if we could see those reports, what we're paying for each month, we know every time we're asking for a leaf collection, we know what we're paying during the autumn, when we're doing weed clearance, we know what we're paying, because it's a fluctuating budget, isn't it? It goes up and down not based on the demands that we use.
So not really. So we pay the same amount on an annual basis and the resources are used differently. So they've got some kind of multidisciplinary teams. They've got some that are waste, some that are street, some that are ground, but they've also got some flexibility within those services, which means that they can do different things on a seasonal basis. So it wouldn't necessarily be reflected on a month by month basis. But I mean, I can look into it and see what might be useful.
Thank you. My next question is, it is going back to rodents again, because I didn't quite catch what Alistair said, but I noticed that at the moment we charge, and I think Councillor Field mentioned it, a lesser rate for a second visit, and that doesn't seem to be on the new fees and charges, and there was no concession there as well. So I do have concerns that with a possibility of more bulky waste and fly tipping happening, and obviously rodents like those little places. And I think looking at priorities, and I understand what Councillor Field was saying about residents, the council was subsidising that. I mean, in my mind, that's something that I feel that I pay my council tax for, because if you suffer a rodent problem, it's likely that it's not down to you. It could come from anybody's kind of an abandoned house, an empty property, it could be anything, but there's rodents everywhere. So it might not be that residents' fault that they're suffering a rodent problem. So to my mind, that's something I would subsidise. What I'd be less willing to subsidise as a taxpayer is if I see that this council pays £10,000 a year to be a member of key cities. And I would much rather subsidise rodents being rodent control than I would that. And I'm sure it has its benefits, but to the resident, I think they'd much rather rodent control. So I'd like to see a priority that this council, particularly if it does increase, take that more seriously and do subsidise rodent control.
I don't know if there was a question there, but just on the second visit, just to make sure we're clear. So previously we charged a first visit fee, a reduced second visit fee, and then a third visit fee, which was the same as the first visit fee. But the cost we pay to the contractor that actually does the visits is the same for all of them. So we've literally just now have a visit fee. So we've overcomplicated our fees and charges for some reason, which is probably historical. Our contractor charges one fee to do a visit, regardless of whether it's a first, second or third visit. So we now charge the customer that fee, they pay us and we pass it straight to the contractor. Otherwise, we were losing the difference between the second visit fee, and so it makes it less complicated for the customer as well. But yeah, it just means that we're not losing money off that second fee.
Thank you. I just think, yeah, I'd rather subsidise that. And I think because we're changing policies and increasing charges in relation to fly tipping, etc., we could be responsible for more fly tipping. Not was directly responsible, but the policy change would indicate that. So just... And also, on the green boxes, did I catch right that we're thinking about charging for recycling boxes, or you're not considering that? You are thinking about... Then I would say it's quite unfair because residents might often recycle. Those boxes are not ideal for recycling and putting out and keeping sturdy and in one piece. And there might be some people abusing the system, but then I would rather some investigation into who's abusing the system and why they're abusing it, rather than charging every resident for doing something that also creates money for this authority with the recycling collections. So I think they're not ideal. The lids blow off constantly. The recycling teams, I'm sure it's their rules, but they put them inside. If that bin gets blown, it's gone. And also rats get in those as well. So it's just, I think that would be if that decision was to be made, you need to look at a better item to sell the resident.
We currently, I think, are the only council in this area that don't charge for these things, and it will be a small charge for every item. So some of them are extremely good value. I think recycling boxes £7, blue sack £3. We're keeping the food waste caddies very cheap in order to encourage people to recycle food. We are introducing a bin charge, which the Conservative administration previously introduced, and then it had to be abandoned. We're bringing that back in because we feel it's necessary to cover the costs, but we are actually offering a subsidised rate for the smaller bin, the 140 litre. So that will be £16.50, which with a waived delivery charge to encourage people. The current situation with ordering these items is you can do it online completely free, and it will be really quick. It will be delivered often within 48 hours, and there are 800 or so going out every month of all these different types of receptacle. There are currently many more. We don't know how many, but we know that there are many more receptacles in the city of Gloucester than actually come in each week in the recycling. So there are people who have them in their sheds, at their allotment. We've heard of people planting trees in them. We've seen people out with the blue sacks, taking them out for shopping. Now, that is, as you say, it is unfortunately a bit of an abuse of the system, and that is something we want to stop. Obviously, we are not trying to discourage recycling, we want to encourage it, but we also have to balance the books. So there's that to be considered. If there's any damage done to these boxes, then that's unfortunate. It will be up to the customer and Ubico to debate that, but too frequently, up till now, we've just had to accept that the blame for breaking things, and most of the cases we will just replace the item rather than challenge it. The onus now will be on customers to, if you like, prove it, but if they can prove it, that's fine. We'll do everything we can to replace, and that was the case before when we introduced the charge for bins of this council. Ubico only have 2 staff who are doing this admin. So if everyone was challenging all the time, they'd be inundated. So something's got to give. And unfortunately, this is the service area that we're looking at. These are the charges we're looking at making, but I think they're modest and appropriate, and will have a big impact on the council's revenue.
Try again with the mic on. So I think we're having to move on now, Sebastian and your team. Thank you very much, Mr. McGinty and Ruth. So we've got community engagement all ready to come and tell us a happy story, hopefully. It's unfair to those of you who come at the tail end to ask you to, shorten your speech, but if you see any phrases, Rebecca, which are superfluous, if you could just cut them out, and then we can make progress. Okay, so that's the price you pay for coming towards the end. Thank you. So over to you.
No, that's absolutely fine. Thank you, Chair. There's just really a few things that I want to mention in terms of my portfolio, so I'll keep it really clear, concise, so then it can be opened up to questions, so that's not a problem at all. First of all, I just want to say about the staffing levels for 26-27. There is going to be a reduction compared to last year. So staffing levels will be 22.8 full-time equivalent compared with 27.8 full-time equivalent last year. So this is a reduction of 5 full-time equivalent posts. We do, however, have 2.2 full-time equivalent current vacancies. And also, if I can just note that any questions on rough sleeping in terms of budget, this is currently the housing part under the coded of housing. So although rough sleeping does come under me, anything budget related comes under that particular housing budget, which is Luke's. So just to note that. Financial pressures for next year, including any potential reduction in income streams. So with the widespread financial challenges across the council, with significant savings still to be found for future years, this means that all activity within my portfolio is going to be reviewed. But I want to reassure members of this committee that service level agreements with the Law Centre, Citizen Advice Bureau and Garras will continue, but will be reviewed over the next 12 months. So just to note that. As you all know, there's changes to the VCSE grant arrangements, which means that the pots of £750 per councillor will be coming to an end. So if you've got any of your pots still to be spent, then please do spend that by the end of March of this year. In replace of that, however, there will be what I've termed the Community Organisation Grant. And this is what I mentioned at council. This will be funded through the Gloucester Lottery. We currently have between 30 and 50,000 already in that pot. So actually, it could work out that there'll be more money spent on community organisations. There will be checks and balances in place. I'm going to be ensuring that every organisation that bids for that money will have a safeguarding policy attached to it, which is fundamental for any voluntary organisation. So that is what will be coming in instead of our small little pots that we're so used to getting. But I just want to also add with that, there has been a variety of success in terms of that. Not every councillor has spent all theirs. So it'll be interesting to see what happens with this new formulation of the grants. There will be a cross-party panel, and I just really want to emphasise that, cross-party panel that will look through the applications. And of course, there will be an emphasis on local organisations and not professional bidding organisations. And I think that's a really important point, because I know there was concern that, you know, those national charities that are very good at bid writing for funds might come and monopolise, but that's something that everyone within the cross-panel working group would actually be aware of. So we have a number of shared services. Sorry, I wasn't going to go on like this. We do have a number of shared services, including Solace, and also grant funding from us to the CPOs. As everyone knows, the Red Jackets. This funding goes to the bid to commission this, along with the OPCC. And then there is also the Household Support Fund, which I have mentioned, and this is 100% externally grant funded, and this is where Citizen Advice, GL Communities, Gloucestershire Gateway Trust, and Gloucester City Homes have some funding from us as well for the activities. So over to you for any questions.
Okay, I think you've covered most of the questions that are likely to arise, but we've got Terry and then Tree. No, Terry, it's not obligatory to speak.
Good job I'm not in an auction.
It's your main by mistake. We'll take it off. Okay, so Tree, it's over to you.
No, I would have bought something then, wouldn't I? Sorry. Yeah, I am looking at something actually, and I'm looking at page 50. Let me just bring it up. Sorry. Oh, Lord. Anyway, yeah, page 50 talks about a reduction in staffing of customer services of 49,692. Is that right? Yes, 49,692. Yeah, and I want to know what that is, please. What, what that's.
By all means. So one of the things we've done over the last 12 months is we have restructured our customer services team, and we had an opportunity where a member of staff was on secondment that became permanent, and that was in one of our team leader posts, and we have restructured the service and consolidated some of our management, and that has surplus to post, and that's what that saving is.
So we've lost posts in customer services.
We have reduced the staff numbers. We have reduced the number of the number of team leaders has gone from 2 to 1. So we manage with 1 team leader rather than 2.
Thank you. And exactly where are those? What are the functions of those posts? Is that in here to help, or is that in a physical presence, or is that an IT support, or what?
No, it's the team leader. We had 2 team leader posts in customer services, and now we have 1 team leader that runs the service, and it is operating as efficiently as it was previously.
I'd like to agree with you operating as efficiently as possible. I sometimes the responses that I put in, particularly to here to help, still take quite a long time before I get a response. But okay, you've told me where the cut is. Thank you.
Councillor Tree, and then Anne Bradley.
It's really good news to hear that there's so much money in the Gloucester lottery pot. But are you able to tell me how many people actually play that, and what what ballpark figure we're looking at monthly as far as revenue goes from that? Oh.
Ruth, would you like to? Because I haven't got a clue.
So the Gloucester Lottery is managed externally on our behalf by a lottery operator. So obviously it means that we're not involved in any of the process. So we wouldn't be able to tell you kind of who plays or how many people play. So it is around £30,000 to £50,000 a year that comes into the central pot. And that fluctuates because people can cancel their tickets and put them on hold. And it depends whether they want to change where their tickets go, whether they go to a good cause or whether they go to the central pot. So there is some fluctuation over the course of the year, which is why we've given it quite a broad, a kind of broad amount. But it has remained pretty stable over the last 4 years. And I suppose my hope would be that everyone gets behind promoting the lottery so that good causes can also benefit from it. And obviously it tops up the central pot as much as we possibly can, so we can give that out to other causes as well.
Thank you, Ruth. I just want to add to that. I think this is where our communications may come into play a bit more as well. I have seen a marked increase in the communications on our Facebook page. So watch this space, because the Gloucester Lottery will be communicated on there. And I do think that take up will come from just even posting on Facebook. So thank you.
Thank you, Chair. You mentioned the Red Jackets, and that's something that's delivered in partnership with funding from the Office of the Police and Crime Commissioner. As there are changes with those structures currently, have you had any consideration about how long-term this service might be, whether it's something that you're planning for the longer term, and if the Police and Crime Office withdrew, whether it's something that would be continued differently?
Thank you for your question. I believe it will be funded for the next 12 months. And then next year it's going to be reviewed again. And when I say reviewed, I think even it's going to be looked at by Gloucester Bid again as well, and the OPCC. So I'm sure that there may be a time to review and do things differently. But that said, we've still got our engagement officers that are also out in the city centre, and they have another year left of the trial as well, which is good. And that money has already been set aside for them. So it's not like we're going to be cutting them this year and within that budget. So, but thank you for your question, Anne.
And do you feel that they are doing what you wanted? Are they making a difference?
Absolutely. I think they are making a massive difference, and there will be an update that's coming to Overview and Scrutiny, maybe April, May time, that we were going to, so you'll be able to see from that. But yes, I think so, definitely.
Lovely. Thank you very much.
Sorry, I was just going to add something to that. So we've committed to the CPOs until the end of the bid period, which is September 2027, so next September. But obviously having our community engagement officers as well means that we can review what's effective, what's working well, what's not working quite so well. So, but we have committed to the CPOs until the end of the bid period.
Thank you, Chair. I can't remember where I saw it, so sorry for not pointing it out properly, but I think there was a section on premises. Where does the club at Tuffley sit within premises? And what's the plan for that? Because my understanding is it's just an empty building getting more and more derelict at the moment. And is that included in the budget anywhere?
So thanks, Stephanie. So that would be included in assets. So that doesn't come under my budget, the Tuffley Club.
So there's no opportunity or anything to do something community with it. So it doesn't, it's just out of your portfolio completely. So there's no intention of it being used as a community facility at all.
Absolutely not. It would be too much to take from that, from this budget. I think because of the situation, it being a premises and one that needs a lot of work, it is safe to say that it remains under that portfolio, which is asset management.
Thank you. My next question is, where did the Gloucester Lottery money go to prior to it being used for councillor community funds?
Yeah, thanks for that question, Stephanie. It was actually seed funding, and it was called Your Gloucester. And I don't know if during your administration you remember it. I know that if Ruth, could you just give some examples of where it went? Because I have heard that they were 500 pots, weren't they?
So there's a report coming to the next cabinet meeting on the way the funding has worked previously, but we have got a long list of all of the different small groups and small grants that have been given out. If you're interested, we're happy to share that. I can't think of any off the top of my head. But yeah, happy to share that. And usually, I mean, every year we do an update on grant funding to the voluntary sector in the previous year, and that usually has a list as well. So you'll be able to see what kind of things have been funded as small grants.
Okay, so the point I was sort of getting at there is it's not going to be an increase, it's not something else that's going to add to the local community organisations, it's just going to be, it's not going to add anything, we're still losing our pots and we're not gaining anything from that at all because it was there being utilised for that purpose anyway.
Yeah, I take your point. I think though my seed funding, again, the checks and balances weren't in place. And I think once you have a look and you see what it was used for, you might sort of suggest, well, yeah, actually, that shouldn't have been used for that, or that shouldn't have been used for that, if you see what I mean. That's how it is.
Final last question that I've got. You talked about the CPOs, the funding, I think we're committed to a certain date, and that money goes to the bid to direct. Now, I am aware that in the past there's been disagreements and sort of discussions over how the CPO should operate, and it hasn't always aligned with council priorities, etc. So how do you monitor that money is being effective and that it is, or we're in contract anyway, but what sort of data do you get to know that that's working effectively? It's having a really good purpose for what our council priorities are. And just on top of that, it might be a good idea to get the bid in at some point, Chair, because that's quite a lot of money and it's quite visible for the whole community. So it might be a good thing to have the bid in a future one.
Yeah, thank you, Stephanie. I think your point about getting Gloucester bid in is actually a really important one, because I have a great deal of respect for Gloucester bid. And I think they have a lot of input in this city, and come what local government reorganisation, I think they will continue to have even more of an impact on our city. So I think to get them to come in, they do a hell of a lot of work in Gloucester. When you think of the Gloucester Bid volunteers and what they do in terms of cleaning up the streets, and when you look at Alan and Tony, and they do such good work. So I think that would be good. In terms of your initial question about the red jackets, so I'm really pleased that I pushed for the continuation of the red jackets since we've been in administration, because at one point there was talk that we wouldn't fund them anymore. But actually, I am really pleased that we do. I think they do sterling work. And now with our engagement officers, it means now that the CPOs can really tackle sort of retail crime a lot better, so that keeping not just residents on the street safe, but actual businesses feeling a lot safer now, because they're in there, they're, you know, sorting things out. We get monthly updates from, well, I expect you probably, the officers may even get more regular updates than monthly, but I tend to get monthly updates and a real breakdown of what they've dealt with in a given month. And I tell you, it's hundreds of incidences, and they really do, you know, shine, to be fair. So it'll be really interesting to see what does happen in terms of CPOs. I know a couple of them are elderly gentlemen now, and I think they are looking at possibly retiring the red jacket, so themselves. So maybe they're just waiting and seeing themselves. But I do rate them highly. So, thank you, Steph.
Okay, so Councillor Terry Pullen.
Thank you.
What will be the last question then? We'll
Okay, right, thank you. Yeah, just going back to the lottery and grants. Ruth, you said that you were guesstimating the income from the lottery to be somewhere between 30 and 50,000. Well, in the past, we know exactly what the grant budget is, so we've been able to go through a routine process of saying we've got, I don't know, 40,000. How can you go through a fair and proper process if you don't know how much you've got to spend? And you won't know how much you've got to spend because you won't know what the lottery will bring in.
I think it is going to have to be sort of almost like backdated per year, isn't it? So what we've got now will take us through then the bidding process of any applications for this next financial year, by which time at that point we would have then accrued that year's worth, which will go into the next year's. Do you see what I'm saying? I'm saying that really complicatedly, actually.
So we have run a similar process with the Still Neighbourhood Fund. So we waited till the pot got to a certain level and then we opened it for bidding. So I mean, the hope is that it would happen annually. It may even happen more than annually, you know, if it reaches the target to then open for bidding. So, but, you know, we obviously, if we do it that way, we can't spend more than we've got. We know exactly how much we've got. The panel can decide how many large grants and how many small grants they might want to give out, and what the priorities for those grants would be in the application process. We've done it before. I think it worked really effectively. I'm confident that it will work again. Terry looks slightly less optimistic.
Let's move on, but I think that we've got two potential items for our work plan. One would be the lottery and the other one might be the bid. We'll consider that later. Okay, so I think that just about wraps up our questions to you, Rebecca, and your team. Thank you very much. And just conscious of time, but Luke and your team, if you can come forward, please. And if anybody's got the key to the boiler room, turn the heating up, that'd be pretty good as well. Why do they turn it off?
I don't know.
Shit to get us out of here. Luke and your team, go for it. You just turned the heating up, by the way. No, keep going. Good. Right, as briefly as you can, please. Briefly as you like. Thank you.
Yes, so well, I'll try and be quick. So yeah, the sort of a whistle-stop tour of the highlights. There are a number of risks that still remain. Demand on the service is high, although it has been sort of trending down over recent months, but the complexity of approaches are increasing. This then causes a budget risk because it generally increases temporary accommodation use. You will see a new row specifically allocated called Revenue Support Grant Temporary Accommodation. This isn't protected, but it is the 1.1 million which we set aside, which is a sensible way to sort of mitigate the risk against the budget pressures that we have. There are 56.4 used to be a challenge, and this has led to a slight increase in agency staff. The proposed budget remains stable this year, which is in part due to increased grant funding. This current financial year it was 1.5, and moving on to next year it's 1.7. It's also important to highlight that the council, housing is a statutory council service, so we will always protect vulnerable residents while maintaining tight controls on spending. What we're also looking at doing is to explore any opportunity to reduce costs and to be fair, that's pretty much good. Keep it short.
It's really helpful, thanks. Questions, comments? It's not compulsory, you Lewis, if you're trying to think one out. It's not compulsory. Arlen.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I've been quiet for a bit, but this was one I prepared earlier. I wish I could tell you the page that I'm looking at, but it's titled Private Sector Housing HMOs. It's page 36. I think it's Appendix F, perhaps. There's an increase in fees and charges of almost £500,000. Is that realistic? And you know, how reliable is it? Is what I'm really asking.
Obviously, yeah, I think it's technically under Jeremy, but he might be able to answer that question.
So there are a few anomalies as to where the budgets are presented, as Rebecca mentioned about rough sleeping being with her, but actually is reflected in this one, and private sector housing actually now sits with the leader, but is still reflected in the housing portfolio in terms of budget. So the HMO income projections relate to the report that we saw that actually James Dykes came and spoke to you about with the leader about the increase in HMO licensing. So we are expecting quite a significant increase in licensing income through HMOs, and we do think that our projections are pragmatic. You know, we haven't gone mad. You know, we obviously want to meet our income projections. We have benchmarked against other local authorities and what they charge for HMO licensing. So we do very much think that that income target is realistic, and we do expect to meet it. So don't quote me on that later.
And just very quickly, because I can't believe this, on private sector housing, there's an increase in employees of 570,000. Now, I cannot believe that's 570,000 in new posts. That's probably a reorganisation or a transfer from somewhere else. So could you just explain what that is? Thank you. And I'd love to think it was 570,000 in new posts, but really not.
So I think what's happened is all of the enforcement team have now been put into the private sector housing team. So that would include envirocrime and planning enforcement. Eventually, that will then be moved to the leader's portfolio and separated out. But at the moment, for administrative purposes, it sits under private sector housing because obviously the manager is the private sector housing manager, or was. Yeah, exactly. So, but we are also expecting an increase in officers to deliver the HMO licensing scheme, which will be funded through the income. So we are expecting that team to grow over the course of the year, and we will be doing that incrementally as the income starts to grow. So we do have plans for some increases.
Just very quickly, Luke, I think if I heard you correctly, you referred to difficulty in recruiting staff and having to use agencies to fill the vacancies. Wherever you hear people talk about employing agencies, that means you're paying above the rate and all the rest of it. What's the issue there? Is it the geographical position of Gloucester pays lower, skills not quite right? Any idea what the problem is there?
I think Gloucester has a high demand. So caseloads in Gloucester are significantly higher. So the MHDLG advised that caseloads should be around about 30 or 40. I think housing staff holding cases are around about 60 to 80. So that obviously causes more people to probably want to leave, and obviously causes sickness to sort of go up. One thing with temporary staff is, yes, they cost a lot more money, but quite often they have that experience, so they can sort of get the numbers and sort of they can be used in quite a good way to reduce things quite quickly. But it does come at a cost. One thing we're looking at is to move into the housing coach model. So instead of looking at just sort of the traditional housing officer, but actually how they can work to coach people coach people with whatever their housing issue might be, and it also sort of sells it differently, I suppose, to people that are going to recruit. So you're not being recruited as a housing officer, but more of a housing coach. Bromford do a very similar thing with their staff, and it seems to work. That's one thing we're looking at.
With housing, and obviously we've got the EFS funding in, and we just had the issue with having to redo the budget, and housing lost some of its money over to the general fund. What guarantees have you got that if we didn't get that EFS funding, now housing is a statutory service, and to me it's one of the most important services that this council operates. What reassurances can you give that this budget will be protected because it's a statutory? I know not all elements of it are statutory, but I think they all work together to prevent really significant damage to residents in some of their most vulnerable times. What reassurances can you give that, how hard will you fight to make sure this isn't touched?
So the funding model changed. So last year we had that increase of £500,000, which was not expected. So we used that to offset the base budget, which I think was a sensible thing to do, to try and protect the rest of the council. The money that comes in through that grant is protected for prevention use, amongst other things. But that 1.7 is protected for housing, if you want to sort of collect it as that sort of thing. So it can't be siphoned off for use for any other sort of purpose. If it doesn't get used, we have to give it back. So there's that aspect to look at as well. Because it is a statutory service, worst case scenario, if it was a sort of 114 notice, that's one of the key services that is going to be protected. That 1.7 is protected. It's not going to be taken anywhere else. It can only be used on housing. The one risk, if you want to look at it that way, is that 1.1 that we've siphoned away from the general fund. There's a new formula that the government used to give us our funding for our next 3 years. So our temporary accommodation got taken out of the the grant funding, it got put into the general fund. So that's why it's sort of separated off. But the 1.7 grant, that's very much protected.
Thank you. My next question is again, it's about the
It's not a hard guillotine on this meeting, so I think the chair indicated an hour, but we'll obviously make space for Councillor Sawyer to do her portfolio as well.
Yep. Couldn't we, it's about the agency workers that's been touched on already. Aren't we better at paying slightly over the norm to get good quality? Because although you say it's expertise when we buy it, get agency staff in, I've had really poor experience with some agency staff given misinformation. And I think that can set the whole case of somebody's homelessness case off on the wrong foot. And couldn't we look at increasing those, what we pay for housing, because it is a very, very difficult job to do, and use less agency? Wouldn't that be, just take that plunge?
So each of the posts are hay evaluated. So I believe there are sort of benchmarked as well. The temporary housing staff has only recently increased. So I think we've got about 3 in at the moment. And it's because essentially 2 or 3 people have just left. So I think we're in that limbo stage where we're hoping to recruit again. When we do recruit, we do get lots of interest and we do manage to fill most of the posts. But there's always a struggle with recruiting. And unfortunately, it's not just a Gloucester issue. I think it's an issue with housing staff across the country, really.
Can I was just going to chip in on that, because I think, you know, one of the challenges that we have is, you know, we sometimes can't just make changes to the pay grades in one service because it has a knock-on impact across the whole council, which obviously we have to be very careful about at the moment. So, you know, I mean, Luke's right in that actually when we do go out to recruitment, we do have good levels of interest, which then means that things like market supplements aren't applicable because we do recruit people. And one of the challenges is the demands that we have and the complexity of some of the cases is that people don't hang around because, you know, the work is really challenging. And I think, you know, we have to, you know, really recognise the roles that are played by the housing officers that have been with this council for a significant period of time. And, you know, housing officers don't get thank you cards, unfortunately, you know, but the work they do is absolutely tremendous and the dedication that they have to this city is fantastic. So, you know, we do really want to look at how we can support those housing officers, how we can keep them passionate for the role and passionate for the people that they serve, despite the challenges and despite the relentless nature of the work that they do. You know, Gloucester does have unique challenges and, you know, that's not going to go away with LGR. I say to my colleagues in other districts, you know, Gloucester's housing challenge will not be ignored. You won't get to ignore it. You won't get to pretend it doesn't exist anymore because it will take over. And it's the same with the base budget. You know, I think that the TA being in the base budget but kind of set aside is a risk both ways because we have to pay for TA. So potentially that's a risk to the base budget and not the housing grant anymore. So, you know, there's a huge amount of work to do to balance that. And we are looking at the staffing. We're looking at how we might reimagine the way that officers work. But, you know, it is something that we've got a really close eye on and we do want to tackle this year.
I think that concludes the session on housing. And last but by no means least, Sarah Sawyer on planning. So thank you, Ruth, and thank you, Luke, for your courtesy and cooperation. Thanks to all women for bringing some chocolate and pink. Okay, Sarah and Andy, off you go. Thank you very much.
Hello. So I'll keep this brief because obviously we're near the end. So planning is pretty much
as you were. We've got staffing of 14.6 full-time employees compared to 15.8 last year, with a reduction of 1.2 full-time employee. And that's basically our planning enforcement officer has moved to the enforcement team, so we no longer have to cover their costs. And so it's pretty much stayed stable. Financial pressures for next year. So we don't really have any financial pressures and losses of income in planning. It's kind of our main cost, the staff costs, and they're pretty stable. So, and our income is on our planning applications, and again, that's been pretty stable. Our proposed budget savings, well, the planning enforcement officer's moved, so that's helped. And we no longer now, if this has been a decision we've made, to use contractors. So in 2024-25, we spent £261,000 on contractors. 2025-26, it's gone down to 57,000, and now we're going down to zero. And any contractors we do use will get external grant funding to cover those costs, because they were very expensive. And now we just recruit internally, and we rely on promoting internally, which has been really good for staff morale as well. So income. So the one thing we are making big changes on is increasing fees for pre-apps. So they haven't actually been reviewed since 2013. So we're looking at increasing them between 25 and 50%. So this will bring in a lot of money, and it's in line with other districts. We're also going to start introducing new charges to cover what we do, so that currently we don't cover our costs. So we're looking at bringing in things like charging for discharging of planning conditions, charging for amendments for previously granted schemes, for post-decision discussions and things like that. We're also going to introduce new admin charges. So if an application comes in and it's not fit for assessment, we'll send it back, but we'll charge an admin fee to cover our costs that we've incurred to date. And that's a new fee. Planning application fees are set nationally, but they will increase by 3.8% this year. The other thing we're looking at doing is improving our efficiency, and our service delivery. So at the moment, most applications don't engage in pre-apps, and often we're getting in quite poor quality applications. And what that means is that officers are spending a lot of time chasing information that's missing, trying to kind of get it up to standard. And also often things change mid-process, and then we have to go out to reconsult with people and neighbours. And at the moment, we bear that cost. So what we're going to do now is say, we want you to engage in a pre-app, but if you don't and you give us a poor quality application, we're no longer going to hold your hand through it. We're just going to assess the application in front of us. So it'll stop lengthy applications, like the Podsmead one that went on for 8 years, where we work really hard with applicants and we still can't get them up to a standard. And we're taking officer time away from applicants that do a pre-app, do give us good quality. And also it means we can do more applications. So it's basically to improve our service. And then priorities and things that have gone well. So planning enforcement, we're improving that. That's gone really well. We've now gone through all the backlog and we put it all up on the database and we're working through that. So we're carrying on improving that service. We're focusing, our priority this year is making sure that we carry on focusing on covering our costs so that income meets costs. We're carrying on improving our website. You can now report a breach directly through the website, and you can also see if you need planning permission. We're focused on spending more of that. We've already spent some on Blackbridge this year, which was really good. We're Section 106, we're carrying on monitoring that really well and making sure that we've got enough staff to monitor that, and currently we're not at risk of returning any of our money. And then we've got the HMO report and the shopfront report looking at taking away permitted development. We're still working on those. The SLP is on track, and officers are working really hard to meet the deadlines for that. And carrying on doing our great performance. This year, 100% of majors were determined on time. 82% of minors were determined on time, and 96.5 others were determined on time. And we've got an 80% success approval rate. So that's our priority, is to keep those figures up, really. That's it.
Cheers. That was a quick trip around the whole department. Thank you very much. Just for a quick question for me, it was disappointing to hear that there's a reluctance to engage with pre-apps, and I think that's something that we've all been trying in the past to encourage. So why do you think that is? Is it because the fees are set too high, or
It's just a cultural thing, isn't it? That
what culture in Gloucester?
Yeah, I think it's a really good point, Andrew. I think it's a good challenge. I don't know is the honest answer as to what the culture is in Gloucester around pre-apps. And if I listen to the rhetoric, I could probably take a view. But the reality is that the team that are in place now and that have stabilised over the 12 months, when you look at that work that they've done, they're really now encouraging a footprint for pre-apps. And where we've seen that mentality come forward, we've had a much better partnership, relationship with onboarding developers and actually getting them through a successful pre-app and giving them some really credible advice. So whatever's been gone before, I think the proven methodology is that pre-apps work, they're there for a reason, and the advice is really sound.
just to add to that, I think because now we're going to be a bit harder on if you give us a poor quality application, we'll just refuse it. I think it will encourage more people to come through and do the pre-app, because obviously it makes sense. Go through a pre-app, you get told exactly where your application is at, what you need to do before you then come and apply. So I just think there'll be a cultural shift.
Just very quickly, before Alice, for the City Council, it's a win-win situation all the way around, and also for the developers. Sorry, Councillor Alistair Chambers.
I was going to say experience with pre-apps through architects I know. By the time they paid their fee and waited 4 or 5 months, where it goes over the statutory time period, is the experience that they've had. So they thought they might as well just put in an application. It didn't cost that much more, and it comes back just as quick. So that's the reason why there's feedback from professionals that are using pre-apps. The time taken, as long as it takes for a planning application, so they might as well just put the planning in.
Is that the pre-app takes a long time, so that once you put the application in, that bit's very quick. And the pre-app bit is the conversations and the going back and forth, and then so I think that's the point, isn't it? That is a lengthy process, because I mean, you've got to remember it's a legal process. There's things that officers have to do to get an application over the line, so you can't bypass it. You either have to do it through the pre-app phase or you have to do it through the post pre-app phase. So they do take time, but we are meeting our targets, so it's working.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments? Steph Chambers, Councillor.
Thank you, Chair. Just in relation to the figures on determined in time, I presume you mean that when we get agreement for extensions, etc., we'll determine them in that time, because I still see quite a lot of applications that are going over the statutory time, but we're getting agreements with the applicants to extend that time. Yeah. There's a section, I think it sits in your portfolio as fees and charges in relation to land charges. Is that a realistic prediction? What's it based on? Because I understand from looking at statistics and companies that work in the industry at the moment, there's been a bit of a stagnation of house moves in Gloucester. So how's that fluctuating within the portfolio at the moment?
My assessment of that is that, we just look at historically the trend, and, it's pretty much the same as it was the year before. It's obviously just that's how they plan budgets, isn't it? They look at historic data and plan it forward. So do you know any more than that?
I think that's fair. It's just a fair forecast. So you look at what's gone, you look at the assumptions as what's to come, and then you make a relevant forecast. But it can never be 100% accurate stuff.
And yeah, I was pleased to hear about the pre-app, but I think there is a lot of work to do with, like you said, within the culture, within the sort of expectations that people are making. And I understand this when we're looking at developers and sort of major applications, but are we going to be doing this sort of tough love to somebody that can't move home, desperately needs extra space, they're just a homeowner? What sort of support are we going to give them? And what are the charging in relation to a normal homeowner pre-app compared to sort of a major application of 10 or more?
The question is going to be on a case-by-case basis. Obviously, if someone just needs a bit of help to get it over the line, they'll be helped. It's the big ones that just take long time to get over the line and still can't get over the line. Those are the ones that we'll be working on. But so is that it there?
Yeah, 3 to 9.
So if it's that one?
Yeah.
So if it's a small one, it's £64, is it? So we're not talking much if you want to pre-up on a small planning application on an extension on your house, it's £64 just to do that.
Yeah, makes sense.
Yeah. Awesome. Know the numbers.
I was just going to add, I think, again, it's a really fair question. As you know, planning is a statutory process, goes through that process for a reason, then comes to committee. It's committee's job in many cases, unless it's delegated to the development planning manager to make the decision. What I would say, though, is that certainly over the last 12 months, I think there's a degree of pragmatism. That's not saying that there's any sway in the planning decision. What I'm saying is that the officers are putting a lot of work and a lot of effort to try and understand on a case-by-case basis where somebody might need that additional help that you might be referring to. Typically, it is at a household level. But even in some minor, smaller developers who have lesser experienced architects, lesser experienced planning agencies, so on and so forth, the planning team are taking a really pragmatic view as to what's needed, rather than just going in there with a hefty fee, and I'm playing quite a large part in that, where I can, before any decisions are made, just to make sure that there's a fair process, but also help is there if needed. So, just to reassure you.
Okay, thank you. And then there was just one other thing that I've heard various sort of concerns in the past. So with the sort of increase in fee with the pre-app, is there going to be a written sort of pre-app conference? Because I've heard so many times that that's not was said in that meeting, and then it might not be that anybody's misinterpreting the truth, but it's just how that understanding was made. So a piece of paper documenting what they're advised in that pre-app, is that given?
There's always written. Yeah, so we'll make sure we're tightening everything up so that everything's tightened up and everyone is clear about what's what really.
I was just saying there is always written correspondence to a pre-app. It's a formal process. It's always written correspondence. Whilst sometimes the determination and the understanding is slightly different, and therefore it needs the applicant to ask questions as to what the planning officer means, there is a written response, and it's just down to interpretation at times.
Thank you very much.
Okay, I think that's our last question. Looking around the table, nobody else wants to contribute, so we'll start to wrap the meeting up. First of all, can I thank everybody in the back row, the MD, the cabinet members, and senior officers for your attendance, for your courtesy. Thank you to the committee for your thoughtful questions. Next time we'll turn the heating up a bit and just leave it at that and say good night. Thank you. Sorry, just Steph, quickly.
I just wanted to make one point, and obviously we've gone over time today, but there was a comment from the leader, but obviously there's 7 members to get through now. It is slightly different. You've got to do an extra 2 members, so it is more difficult to get through.
Absolutely. I think it takes, well, I'm not going to open up the meeting again, but I think it's, 9:45. It is what it is. And I was very firm, and I'm not going to repeat it and take a long time over it, but it is important that we get our papers in time. That adds a lot of extra time at meetings when we don't. On that not very upbeat comment, I'm going to close the meeting. Thank you.